Chapter 1592. Lu Zheng grabbed Lu Hong's hand and asked with concern, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Lu Hong shook her head and didn't resist. It seemed that under Lu Zheng's relentless pursuit, Lu Hong had begun to try to accept him. Zhao Ximing patted the back of her hand awkwardly and looked at it in surprise. There were 2 teeth marks on it, and blood was flowing out. "This is..." Her gaze trembled. At the same time, the Phantom Snake Emperor appeared and grinned at Zhao Ximing. "Damn it!" Zhao Ximing was instantly furious. Ning Yifeng quickly took out an antidote pill, ran to Zhao Ximing, and put it in her mouth. The Golden Wolf King mocked. "How dare you mess around in the castle? You're really stupid." Zhao Ximing flew into a rage out of humiliation. Ning Yifeng looked at Qin Feiyang warily and said, "Brother Qin, this is a misunderstanding." But before Ning Yifeng could finish, Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said, "I don't want to hear any explanation. I only know that you did do something that repaid kindness with ingratitude." "Then what do you want?" Zhao Ximing said angrily. "What do I want?" Qin Feiyang raised the corner of his mouth and said, "Take off your battle suits." "What?" Ning Yifeng's face turned pale. Qin Feiyang said indifferently, "My principle is that if you do something wrong, you must pay the price." "Impossible," Zhao Ximing said angrily. "I'm afraid that's not up to you." Qin Feiyang chuckled and nodded to the Golden Wolf King. The Golden Wolf King understood and opened his mouth, revealing a mouthful of sharp fangs, and walked toward the 2 of them step by step. The 2 of them kept retreating, their faces full of panic. "I advise you to take the initiative to hand it over. If you force me to take action, the consequences are not something you can bear." The Golden Wolf King laughed. "Okay, I'll give it to you," Ning Yifeng said in a deep voice. Zhao Ximing said, "Ning Yifeng, you're yielding just like that? Do you still have any backbone?" "Sister, you're being silly. Do you still not understand what's going on? We are in the castle. Even if father and the others come, they won't be able to save us. Right now we have to follow their wishes. Preserving our lives is more important." Ning Yifeng sighed inwardly. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "We can give you our battle suits, but you have to promise not to hurt us. Once the battle is over, you have to let us go." The Golden Wolf King said, "You still know how to negotiate terms? Looks like you haven't been scared out of your wits. But now, do you have the right to negotiate terms?" "I'm talking to Qin Feiyang. What does it have to do with you?" "Shut up," Ning Yifeng said furiously. Qin Feiyang said lightly, "Its words are also my words. Do you have any objections?" Ning Yifeng's heart trembled. Originally, he was still wondering why Qin Feiyang had so many fierce beasts around him. So it was because of his personality. He treated the beasts like a friend. "Hurry up," the Golden Wolf King shouted impatiently. Ning Yifeng said, "If you don't agree to my terms, I won't give it to you even if I die." "Idiot. If you have the ability, then go and die. We can just pick up a ready-made one." The Golden Wolf King sneered. Ning Yifeng's body stiffened. That's right. If he and Zhao Ximing died, the 2 battle suits would be ownerless, which would be convenient for these people. The Golden Wolf King joked. "Why don't you guys self-destruct? Maybe you can hurt us." Ning Yifeng was furious. Self-destruction, wasn't it equivalent to suicide? This beast was simply taking the opportunity to humiliate him. "Kill." Suddenly, the willow tree's stern voice sounded outside. Ning Yifeng and Ning Yifeng were startled. They quickly looked at the screen behind Qin Feiyang and saw Willow Tree controlling Chang Shui to slash at the old woman in black. Sharp edge, tearing the sky and splitting the earth. This is an opportunity. Ning Yifeng's eyes flickered. The battle outside had officially begun. The attention of Qin Feiyang and the group would definitely be attracted by the battle outside. Then he could take the opportunity to attack the people around Qin Feiyang again. He glanced at Fatso and the rest from the corner of his eye and discovered that Lu Hong and the Spirit Serpent Emperor had the lowest cultivation level. Hence, he targeted the Spirit Serpent Emperor. This was because Lu Hong was now under the protection of Lu Zheng. There was no chance for him to attack her. However, when he glanced at Qin Feiyang, he discovered that Qin Feiyang was not paying attention to the battle outside at all. Besides Qin Feiyang, the Golden Wolf King, Fatso and the rest also did not look at the battle outside. They were still staring at him and Zhao Ximing. It was as if they did not care about the battle outside at all. Aren't you guys worried? Ning Yifeng was stunned. The group smiled but did not say anything. Ning Yifeng was somewhat caught off guard. What do you want to do? Fatso smiled mockingly. Ning Yifeng's heart trembled. Could it be that these people had already seen through his thoughts? It seems that you guys want me to attack. Golden Wolf King grinned and suddenly pounced on Ning Yifeng fiercely. Ning Yifeng's expression changed and he quickly said, "Okay, I'll give it to you. You can also change the condition. Don't kill us." "Okay." Qin Feiyang nodded. "I hope you're a man of your word." Ning Yifeng took a deep look at Qin Feiyang. He gritted his teeth, took off the battle suit from his body and flew toward Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang grabbed it and directly erased the blood contract inside. He then looked at Zhao Ximing. "Sister, give it to them quickly. At most, I'll give you another one after we escape." Ning Yifeng secretly urged her. Zhao Ximing glanced at Ning Yifeng and then looked at Qin Feiyang. With a thought, the battle suit on her body automatically took off. Qin Feiyang took a step forward and quickly erased the blood contract inside. He then kept the two battle suits. Next, he no longer paid attention to Ning Yifeng and turned to look at the scene in front of him. Zhao Ximing kept staring at Qin Feiyang's back. There was a trace of cold light flashing in the depths of her eyes. In the blink of an eye, outside, in the face of Chang Shue's attack, the old woman in black did not have the slightest fear. She looked at the other four elders and shouted, "Activate the sword formation." "Okay." The four elders nodded. The five of them waved their hands and 5 battle swords rushed into the sky. The sword tip faced up and the sword hilt face down, forming a circular sword formation. Clang. Boom. As soon as the sword formation was formed, divine light shone. Whether it was the momentum or the sharpness, it soared several times in an instant. Then, rays of shocking sword light surged out of the sword formation and turned into a terrifying wave of sword qi, rushing toward Chang Shui. The earth collapsed and the void collapsed. The terrifying sword light destroyed everything. This sword formation was originally used to deal with the Grand Deacon of the Vanga League. Now it's yours. The old woman laughed sinisterly. Willow Tree laughed and said, "You want to compete with Chang Shui with a mere sword formation? You underestimate it. I have also heard of the power of Chang Shui. It can destroy the rainbow sword because the rainbow sword is too weak. Our 5 battle swords can't be compared to the cyan rainbow sword." The 5 of them sneered. "I advise you not to be too confident." The corner of Willow Tree's mouth lifted. Before his voice died away, Chang Shui suddenly collided with the huge wave. Without the slightest pause, he directly crushed it. "What?" The old woman and the others' expressions changed drastically. This sword formation combined the power of the 5 battle swords into one. It was not difficult to imagine the power of the 5 divine artifacts combined into one. They thought that even if the sword formation could not destroy Chang Shui, it could definitely block Chang Shui. However, they did not expect the result to be like this. This was a completely unstoppable situation. Are you surprised by this? Then let me tell you, the power that Chang Shui has shown is only the tip of the iceberg. Willow Tree sneered and controlled Chang Shui to slash at the sword formation. Arrogant. The old woman was furious. She looked at the other 4 and shouted, "Merge!" The 4 of them nodded vigorously. The 5 battle swords floating in the air, accompanied by a deafening sound, merged into one battle sword. A world-destroying aura suddenly roared out. The merged battle sword was more than 10 meters long. Its entire body was glowing with a dazzling golden light. Even heaven and earth paled in comparison. The terrifying sword light tore through the sky and rushed to the top of the 9 heavens. The old woman stepped forward, grabbed the battle sword, and slashed in the air. A golden dragon formed by sword qi suddenly roared out. An elder behind Willow Tree suddenly thought of something and said in surprise, "Willow Tree, they seem to be using the 9 Palaces sword formation." 9 Palaces sword formation. Willow Tree's gaze trembled. He seemed to be very wary. However, a cold smile appeared on his face soon after. He said, "Who cares what sword formation it is? It's all rotten wood in front of Chang Shui." It can't withstand a single blow. Don't underestimate it. You should know that the 9 Palaces sword formation is the strongest trump card of the 10 elders of the Fengtian Palace. The 6 elders were deeply worried. Just wait and see, Willow Tree said confidently. Roar. Clang. Accompanied by a dragon's roar and a loud sound, Chang Shui and the golden dragon met in the void. In an instant, sparks flew all over the sky like fireworks, illuminating the world. The next moment, the golden dragon formed by sword chi let out a wail and shattered into pieces, quickly dissipating. The battle sword in the old woman's hand also dissipated. The 5 battle swords materialized in the air. This also meant that the 9 Palaces sword formation had been broken. How is this possible? The old woman and the others vomited blood, their old faces full of disbelief. Even the 9 Palaces sword formation could not stop Chang Shui? I told you, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Chang Shui's true power is enough to make you despair. Willow Tree roared into the sky, soared into the sky, grabbed Chang Shui, and charged toward the old woman. True power. The old woman muttered, her body and mind trembling. If what Willow Tree said was true, then how terrifying would Chang Shui be when he fully recovered? In fact, what Willow Tree said was Chang Shui's power of law, space-time travel. Of course, the people of the Black Tortoise world did not know about Chang Shui's power of law. Not to mention Chang Shui, even the ancient castle's power of law, time stop, was not known to the people of the Fengtian Palace. Although Zhuge Mingyang had displayed the power of laws in the main tower and the ancient castle, everyone in the main tower had been killed by him. The remaining 6 elders also submitted to Qin Feiyang. Therefore, other than Willow Tree and the others, no one in the Black Tortoise world knew that his 2 divine artifacts had the power of law. Even Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing did not know, because when he killed the fire dragon and fought the giant python, Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing were still outside the volcano. Of course, Zhuge Mingyang might know. Chapter 1593. However, the power of laws of Chang Shui and the castle couldn't be used at will. They had to be fully recovered. Even if there were dozens of pseudo-divinities, it would still be impossible to fully awaken the 2 divine artifacts. Get out of the way. Seeing that the old woman was shocked by Chang Shui and didn't notice the willow tree in front of her, the other 4 people hurriedly shouted. The old woman suddenly trembled. She grabbed a sword and slashed at Willow Tree. Willow Tree grinned and raised Chang Shui to meet the sword. We can't fight Chang Shui head-on. The 4 people hurriedly shouted. The Qinghong sword was destroyed by Chang Shui. What if the sword was destroyed too? The old woman suddenly came to a realization. Seeing that Chang Shui and the sword were about to meet, the old woman quickly retracted her arm, and then prepared to retreat with the 5 swords. Because before, when the sword formation was broken, the 5 swords were with the old woman. If she didn't take them away now, they would definitely fall into Willow Tree's hands. But at this moment, swish, 2 young men suddenly appeared. It was Qin Feiyang and Lu Zheng. They had been waiting for an opportunity in the castle. As soon as the 2 appeared, they grabbed 2 swords in front of the old woman and disappeared without a trace. This scene shocked the old woman and the others. But Willow Tree Yu Huang and the 6 elders were ecstatic. What could be more exciting than seizing 4 divine artifacts in one go? The most important thing was, without these artifacts, the elders of Fengtian Palace would lose their fangs. They were no longer a threat to them. Because not only did they have Chang Shui, but they also had the 7-star sword and the snake scale. Furthermore, the current situation was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them. Willow Tree go. Yu Huang transmitted his voice. Hearing this, Willow Tree immediately grabbed Chang Shui and charged toward the old woman. The old woman was still in a state of shock. By the time Willow Tree attacked, it was already too late for her to counterattack. Ah! A blood-curdling scream rang out as blood splattered everywhere. Chang Shui was indestructible. It directly pierced through her skull. Not only did it penetrate her mind, it even shattered her soul. Willow Tree, you deserve to die. The old woman's screams also woke up the other 4 people. When they saw the old woman's situation, they immediately bared their teeth and roared angrily. Willow Tree turned a deaf ear and snatched the sword from the old woman's hand. He pulled out the Chang Shui and stabbed the old woman's head. Blood splattered across the sky. The old woman died on the spot. Inside the castle, Ning Yifeng and Zhao Ximing were both dumbfounded. Not only did he steal the 5 swords, but he also killed the old woman? Oh my god! This group of people was too terrifying. Whether it was Qin Feiyang and Lu Zheng going out to snatch the swords, or Willow Tree taking the opportunity to kill the old woman, their cooperation was flawless. The most terrifying thing was that dagger. Without that dagger, no matter how powerful Qin Feiyang and the others were, no matter how good their cooperation was, it would be useless. At the same time, Li Chang, who was hiding in the space divine item, also turned pale. He was even trembling. In his eyes, in addition to disbelief, there was also deep fear. He finally understood why Qin Feiyang had always been so confident. With such a heaven-defying divine artifact in hand, if it were him, he would also be so confident. Bang! The old woman fell to the ground, no longer breathing. A pseudo-god of a generation, a giant, fell just like that. Swish! Qin Feiyang also appeared. Willow Tree handed the sword to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang grabbed the sword and waved it in the void a few times. He nodded and said with a smile, "Not bad, 7 divine artifacts. This trip was not in vain." 7? Aren't there 5 swords? Willow Tree was suspicious. Think about it carefully. Qin Feiyang smiled. Willow Tree pondered for a moment and said, "So that's how it is." There was no suspense. The young master must have snatched the battle suits of Ning Yifeng and Lu Zheng. Qin Feiyang's eyes were cold. He pointed the sword at the other 4 elders, and a monstrous murderous aura rushed out of his body. He said, "Don't leave anyone alive, kill them all." Understood. Willow Tree nodded, grabbed Chang Shui, and rushed toward the white-haired old man with murderous intent. Yu Huang also immediately took out the snake scale and attacked a black-robed old man. The 6 great elders, on the other hand, attacked the other 2. Although the 6 elders did not have divine artifacts, they had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers. 6 against 2. Although the 2 of them had reached stage 10 false god, they did not have divine artifacts, and it was difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 legs. The most important thing was, after losing their divine artifacts, they also lost confidence in facing Chang Shui. So, seeing Willow Tree and the others attack, they immediately turned around and fled. "Weren't you very arrogant at the beginning? Why are you running now?" Willow Tree sneered. The 4 of them were angry and said in unison, "If you have the ability, put down Chang Shui. If you are afraid, then you are afraid. Why do you have to find an excuse?" Willow Tree smiled disdainfully. Boom. However, at this time, a terrifying aura suddenly appeared in the sky above the valley. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly turned their heads to look. They saw a 1-armed old man appear in the void above. He was about 1.8 meters tall, with a ruddy complexion and white hair. His dark eyes were like sharp arrows, revealing a terrifying sharpness. His divine power shook the void. The Grand Deacon of the Vanga League. Willow Tree's pupils constricted. But when he felt the power from Chang Shui, the fear in his heart disappeared in an instant. Instead, he had an impulse to give it a try. "Don't worry about him, continue to chase," Qin Feiyang shouted. However, before his voice died away, the white-haired old man who was being chased by Willow Tree suddenly disappeared in front of their eyes. Then, the old man in black and the other 2 disappeared one after another. Willow Tree raised his eyebrows and poured out his divine sense, covering all directions. Soon, he caught a space divine object. The space divine object was quickly escaping. Willow Tree quickly turned to Qin Feiyang and said, "It was Li Chang who saved them." Qin Feiyang said, "Trapped in the space divine object." "Okay." Willow Tree nodded and sent a sound transmission. "Yu Huang, you guys go chase, I'll keep an eye on the Grand Deacon." Yu Huang and the 6 great elders nodded. Their divine sense rolled out and turned into a stream of light, chasing after the space divine object like lightning. "What's going on?" The 1-armed old man stood in the air with a look of surprise. Why were Qin Feiyang and Willow Tree here? And Li Chang? Wasn't he the son of the palace master of the heavenly palace? Why was he here? Could it be that they had the same name? And Li Chang? He was only a 5-star war emperor. How could his speed compare to Yu Huang and the 6 great elders? In a few blinks of an eye, Yu Huang and the 6 great elders chased after him. Their divine sense was also firmly locked onto the space divine object. Then, the power of the fake god surged out and drowned the sky. A huge divine power enchantment was quickly formed, and then it kept shrinking. Li Chang panicked. For elders, what should we do now? The old man in white said in a deep voice, with your speed, you can't escape. Give me the space divine object. There's no need to escape, the old man in black suddenly said. Li Chang said, why not? Do you have a way to stop Chang Shui? No. But now the great deacon of the Vanga League is rushing over. We can use the Vanga League to deal with Qin Feiyang. The old man in black laughed sinisterly. What should we do? The old man in white asked. The old man in black said, Li Chang, immediately inform the palace master and ask him to bring reinforcements immediately. It's best to bring that divine artifact. Okay. Li Chang nodded. The old man in black looked at the old man in white and said, we won't give up until we get back the divine artifact. Let's go out and delay them. The 3 of them nodded. Be careful. Li Chang reminded them and sent the 4 of them out. Qin Feiyang, I won't let you go. Li Chang gritted his teeth and muttered, immediately taking out the image crystal. Outside. Upon seeing the appearance of the 4 elders, Baiming Yuhuang coldly laughed. Not fleeing anymore? Why are they here too? The one-armed old man was stunned. The black-haired old man glanced at Baiming Yuhuang and the 6 elders as he snorted. After that, he inclined his head and stared at the single-armed old man. Grand Deacon, Ning Yifeng and Zhao Ximing have already died in Qin Feiyang's hands. What? The one-armed old man's expression changed. How dare you fan the flames? You're really reckless. Yu Huang was also enraged. She immediately brought Snake Scale with her and rushed over. The 6 elders followed closely behind. Attack! The old man in black roared. The 4 of them used their respective skills and started a bloody battle with Yu Huang and the 6 elders. Qin Feiyang, how dare you? The one-armed old man came back to his senses and immediately looked down at Qin Feiyang and shouted angrily. How dare you be rude to the young master? The willow tree also shouted angrily and stood in front of Qin Feiyang. Willow tree, treat the old with respect. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and walked forward, gently pushing the willow tree away. He looked up at the one-armed old man and said with a smile, don't be instigated by the people of Fengtian Palace. Ning Yifeng and Zhao Ximing are not dead. Not dead? The one-armed old man was stunned and said in a low voice, then where are they now? It's in my spatial divine item. Qin Feiyang said. Let them out. The one-armed old man said. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and Ning Yifeng and Zhao Ximing immediately appeared. As soon as the 2 came out, they immediately ran toward the one-armed old man. Qin Feiyang's face darkened slightly and said, did I say you can leave? The willow tree immediately released its power and forcibly dragged the 2 back and then imprisoned them. Seeing this, the one-armed old man quickly shouted at Qin Feiyang and the willow tree. What are you doing? Nothing. I just want you to confirm that they are really not dead. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. The one-armed old man's eyes were gloomy as he glared at Ning Yifeng and Zhao Ximing and shouted. You are simply fooling around. What are you doing here? Do you have nothing better to do? The 2 lowered their heads, their hearts full of regret. If I didn't find out that the treasure map was stolen, I wouldn't have thought that you would sneak here. The one-armed old man became angrier and angrier as he spoke. Where is father? Ning Yifeng asked. He just received a message, but it was suddenly interrupted. After confirming it again and again, he found that it was you who sent him the message. However, he didn't expect that you would be in danger, nor did he expect that someone would dare to attack the people of the Vanga League, so he just asked me to come and take a look. The one-armed old man said. Then hurry up and leave. Qin Feiyang's dagger is too terrifying. The Grand Elder of the Fengtian Palace has already died in their hands. Ning Yifeng said anxiously. What? The one-armed old man's eyes trembled. He glanced at Qin Feiyang and the willow tree, as well as the Chang Shui in the willow tree's hand. then at Yu Huang and the 6 elders, and then at the ground below. Soon. Chapter 1594. As a sworn enemy for many years, he knew how strong the old woman was. Even he couldn't kill the old woman. But he didn't expect that she would die at the hands of Qin Feiyang and the others. Dagger. He muttered to himself and looked at the Chang Shui in Willow Tree's hand. His old eyes flashed. With just a dagger, this group of people could run rampant in the Black Tortoise world. What level of divine object was this? Wait. Suddenly, the one-armed old man seemed to have thought of something. He looked at Ning Yifeng and said, "Don't they all have divine artifacts?" Ning Yifeng shot a glance at Qin Feiyang and said with a pout, "Their divine artifacts are all in this guy's hands." What? The one-armed old man's expression changed. Zhao Shiming said angrily, "And our battle suits, they were also taken by him." The one-armed old man was dumbstruck. He didn't know how to describe his mood at this moment. Boom. Suddenly, his aura was released, and a monstrous killing intent broke out of his body. It seems that this battle is unavoidable. Willow Tree smiled coldly and immediately recovered the Chang Shui. The one-armed old man glanced at Willow Tree, turned around, and rushed toward Yu Huang and the 6 elders. "Your opponent is me." Willow Tree shouted angrily and used an auxiliary divine art to chase after him. But the one-armed old man also had an auxiliary divine art. At the same time, sensing the one-armed old man's aura, Yu Huang's eyes flashed coldly. He shouted to the 6 elders, "You kill them, I will stop him." After that, Yu Huang immediately rushed toward the one-armed old man with the snake scale. However, the 4 elders of the Fengtian Palace were overjoyed when they saw the one-armed old man join the battle. With the help of the one-armed old man, even if they couldn't suppress Qin Feiyang and the others, they could at least delay until the palace master came to help. "What is the great deacon doing? Didn't we let him go? Qin Feiyang's aura is at its peak, and he has the Chang Shui. How can he beat him?" Ning Yifeng was extremely anxious. Zhao Shiming was also extremely flustered. If even the head deacon died here, then they would really be hopeless. In the blink of an eye, the one-armed old man and Yu Huang were about to collide. But suddenly, the one-armed old man took a step forward, brushing past Yu Huang. Immediately after, he dashed towards the 6 elders, his entire body brimming with killing intent. Damn it! The expressions of the 6 elders changed. Yu Huang and Willow Tree were also very anxious. Good chance, kill them all. The 4 people from the Fengtian Palace roared, and charged towards the 6 elders without holding back. In front of him was the one-armed old man, and behind him were the 4 people from Fengtian Palace. Moreover, all 5 of them were ranked 10 false gods. The 6 elders almost despaired. Seeing this, the 4 from Fengtian Palace laughed sinisterly. They roared in anger, "Die!" The single-armed elder also took out a long staff. It was 5 feet long and as thick as an infant's arm. It was completely scarlet red, as if it was cast from magma. It emitted a wave of world-destroying divine might. He grabbed the long staff, and with a deafening sound of wind and thunder, he smashed it towards the 6 elders. "How dare you!" Qin Feiyang suddenly roared and grabbed Ning Yifeng and Zhao Shiming's neck with both hands. His eyes flashed with bone-chilling killing intent. But the one-armed old man turned a deaf ear. He did not even turn around to look. His old eyes were filled with madness. "Go and be buried with them." Qin Feiyang smiled sinisterly, and was about to kill Ning Yifeng and Zhao Shiming. However, at this time, the one-armed old man suddenly took a step forward and instantly flew over the heads of the 6 elders. The long staff in his hand swept towards the 4 elders of Fengtian Palace. This, Qin Feiyang's face suddenly froze. What's going on? Willow Tree, Yu Huang, the 6 elders, Ning Yifeng and Zhao Shiming were also stunned. The 4 from Fengtian Palace were also caught off guard. Bang bang bang. Ah! For cries of agony could be heard. The 4 from Fengtian Palace were blown away by the long staff on the spot, blood spurting out from their mouths. "What are you doing? Come and help!" The one-armed old man shouted. Holding the long staff, he rushed towards the black-clothed old man. The 6 elders, Willow Tree, and Yu Huang quivered and immediately rushed towards the other 3. What the hell is going on? Inside the space divine object. Li Chang flew into a rage and roared again and again. Although all of this was instigated by Feng Tian Palace, the deacon did not know anything. Because from the time the deacon came here until now, no one had mentioned this matter. In other words, what the deacon knew now was only limited to Qin Feiyang hurting Ning Yifeng and Zhao Ximeng. Logically speaking, shouldn't he first kill Qin Feiyang and rescue Ning Yifeng and Zhao Ximeng? But why did he suddenly attack Feng Tian Palace? With the addition of the one-armed old man, the situation was completely one-sided. In less than 5 breaths, accompanied by a series of screams, the 4 from Feng Tian Palace had their sea of qi destroyed one after another. At this time, Li Chang regained his senses and wanted to save them, but it was too late. And at this moment he did not have the courage to save the 4 of them, so he directly used the space divine object and began to flee. Want to run? Did you ask for my permission? Willow Tree smiled contemptuously. The force of the false god rolled out, and a barrier appeared again. The space divine object was immediately imprisoned. Li Chang was immediately scared out of his wits. He quickly activated the image crystal and sent a message to his father for help. Not far away in the void, Qin Feiyang looked at the one-armed old man, his eyes flashing. With a wave of his hand, he sent Ning Yifeng and Zhao Ximeng to the ancient castle, then stepped on the void and landed beside Willow Tree. Where are Feng and the others? The one-armed old man turned to look at Qin Feiyang, his eyes flashing coldly, and asked, "They are safe." Qin Feiyang smiled. Willow Tree looked at the one-armed old man warily, whispering, "Young master, what about Li Chang?" Qin Feiyang said in his heart, "This person is worthless, but I want his space divine object." "Don't you already have the ancient castle?" Willow Tree was suspicious. "I do, but you don't have it." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "Me?" Willow Tree pointed at his nose with a dumbfounded expression. "Yes. Wait until I leave the Black Tortoise world. With the space divine object, your safety will be completely guaranteed." Qin Feiyang said in his heart. "Thank you." Willow Tree was touched. He thought that Qin Feiyang wanted Li Chang's space divine object for himself, but he didn't expect it to be for his sake. Qin Feiyang smiled and transmitted his voice to Willow Tree, "Yu Huang, and the 6 elders. Be alert, don't let the Feng Tian Palace's people rescue Li Chang." "What do you mean?" Yu Huang was bewildered. "Li Chang won't sit still and wait for death. He will definitely report the situation back to the Feng Tian Palace. Once the Feng Tian Palace learns of the situation, as I expected, they won't fight us head-on. Because they aren't confident," Qin Feiyang said in his heart. Willow Tree said, "So, they will quickly rescue Li Chang and leave?" "That's right." Qin Feiyang nodded. After he finished speaking, he glanced at the 4 elders who were lying on the ground on their last breaths and said, "Bring all of them here." Willow Tree took a step forward, carrying the 4 elders and returning to Qin Feiyang's side. "What do you want?" The one-armed old man frowned. Qin Feiyang formed a hand seal, and 4 enslavement seals appeared and sank into the 4 elders' heads. At the same time, a figure suddenly appeared in the void above. It was a middle-aged man. As soon as he appeared, he raised his arm and pointed in the air. The false god power poured out and blasted at the divine power barrier. Boom! The barrier was instantly shattered. Palace Master of the Feng Tian Palace. The one-armed old man was shocked, and when he looked up, his expression changed slightly. But at the same time, Willow Tree, Yu Huang, and the 6 elders rushed into the sky like lightning. The one-armed old man was stunned. The middle-aged man was also stunned. Why weren't these people surprised at all? It was as if they had been prepared for this. Willow Tree laughed. The false god power appeared and trapped the divine power of space again. Together with Yu Huang, it stood between the middle-aged man and the divine power of space. The 6 elders immediately spread out and stood in 6 different directions, surrounding the divine power of space. And their divine will was firmly locked on to the divine power of space. Qin Feiyang chuckled and sent the 4 elders to the castle. Then he stepped into the sky step by step and looked at the middle-aged man with a smile. "I've been waiting for you for a long time, senior." "You knew I would come?" The middle-aged man raised his eyebrows. He was 7 feet tall and had a square face. His body was rather robust, and he wore a long white robe. There were strands of white hair at his temples. His hands were behind his back, and he was imperceptibly emitting a strong sense of oppression. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Not only did I know you would come, but I also knew you wouldn't fight with us." The middle-aged man was surprised and said, "So you won't give me a chance to save Li Chang?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled. "Of course, I can let him go. Tell me your conditions." The middle-aged man said. As long as one wasn't an idiot, they would know that there must be conditions. Senior is really a straightforward person. I won't dawdle. I want Li Chang's divine power of space. Once I get it, I will let him go immediately. Qin Feiyang said. No problem. The middle-aged man nodded and said loudly without hesitation, Li Chang, come out and give him the divine power of space. Qin Feiyang was stunned and turned to look at Willow Tree and asked, Is this person so straightforward? His son is in your hands. How can he not be straightforward? Besides, for him, it's worth it to exchange a divine power of space for his son's life. Willow Tree sneered. So my price is still too low? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Then what else do you want? Willow Tree smiled bitterly. The divine artifacts of the 5 elders were all in their hands. In addition to the old woman, the other 4 elders were also captured. Was that not enough? However, Li Chang didn't come out. Qin Feiyang raised the corner of his mouth slightly, looked up at the middle-aged man and said with a smile, Your son seems to be a little unconvinced. It seems that I have to raise the price. The middle-aged man's eyes suddenly had a trace of anger. He shouted, If you don't come out, I will let you fend for yourself here. Hearing this, Li Chang immediately ran out, his face full of unwillingness. Hurry up and give it to him. The middle-aged man said angrily. Li Chang's eyes trembled. With a thought, a black light swept out from between his eyebrows and flew to Qin Feiyang's side. This was a black stone castle, about the size of a baby's fist, glowing with a hazy divine light. Take it. Qin Feiyang looked at the stone castle and smiled at Willow Tree. Thank you, young master. Chapter 1595. Give it to him? Both the patriarch of the Fengtian Palace and the one-armed old man were astounded. Putting everything else aside, Willow Tree really followed the right person. First, he got the 7-star sword, and now he got the space divine item. His strength soared several times. Let him go. The palace master came back to his senses and looked at Qin Feiyang. Willow Tree put away the space divine item, turned around, and grabbed Li Chang's neck. Li Chang's expression changed. The palace master stared at Qin Feiyang and asked, What do you mean? Qin Feiyang smiled. Willow Tree, we have to be men of our word. Let him go. Willow Tree was stunned and asked, Are you sure? He thought that Qin Feiyang said to let Li Chang go just to buy time. He didn't expect that he would really let him go. And Qin Feiyang nodded. Willow Tree shook his head helplessly and removed the divine power barrier. He then threw Li Chang at the feet of the palace master. Li Chang got up in a sorry state and looked at Qin Feiyang's group with hatred. He said, Just you wait. Slap. The palace master of the Celestial Worship Palace immediately slapped him. Father. Li Chang was stunned. He touched his burning face and looked at the palace master in disbelief. Don't you think you've embarrassed yourself enough? Go back immediately. Without my order, you're not allowed to take half a step out of the palace master. Fengtian Palace master shouted. Li Chang's body trembled as he opened a teleportation gate. After taking a glance at Qin Feiyang, he turned around and ran in with a belly full of anger. If we had disciplined him earlier, he wouldn't have caused such a disaster. Willow Tree sneered. The palace master glanced at Willow Tree, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said, For great elders, state your conditions. Qin Feiyang was stunned. I know that you want to capture them and use them for yourself. However, I can tell you responsibly that it's useless. The palace master of the Imperial Conferring Palace said. Useless? Qin Feiyang was stunned and asked curiously. Then why don't you tell me why it's useless? Because of their loyalty. They will never betray Fengtian Palace. If you keep them by your side, not only will they not be able to help you, they might even take your life at any time. The palace master of the imperial conferring palace said expressionlessly. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. Willow Tree, is what he said true? I'm not sure. Willow Tree shook his head, pondered for a while and said, however, we can exchange. Exchange? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Yes. The 10 great elders of the Fengtian Palace have mastered a divine art called the 9 Palaces Sword Formation. If this 9 Palaces Sword Formation is used to the extreme, it's enough to destroy the world. Willow Tree said. Is that so? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Yes. The 9 Palaces Sword Formation is very famous. Even the Venga League is very wary of it. Willow Tree said. They used the 9 Palaces Sword Formation before, but I didn't see how powerful it was. Qin Feiyang said. That's because it's not complete. The real 9 Palaces Sword Formation requires 9 divine swords and a sword heart to exert its full power. 9 divine swords, excluding the 5 in our hands. The other 4 are in the hands of the 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th elders of the Fengtian Palace. As for the sword heart, it's in the hands of the 10th elder of the Fengtian Palace. And the sword heart is the most important. Without the sword heart, you can still form the 9 Palaces Sword Formation, but its power will be reduced by at least 1/3. Willow Tree said. So powerful? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Willow Tree said, if we can exchange the 4 elders for the sword heart and the other 4 divine swords, it's a good deal. Qin Feiyang asked, is the 10th elder of the Fengtian Palace stronger than the 1st elder? Why do you ask? Willow Tree was puzzled. You said that the sword heart is the most important, so it should be controlled by the strongest person. Qin Feiyang said. Oh, I see. In fact, whether it's the 10 elders of the Fengtian Palace or the 10 deacons of the Venga League, their strength is about the same. Because they are all level 10 false god. The only difference is their age and prestige. The older they are, the more prestige they have. The 10th elder of the Fengtian Palace used to be the servant of the palace lord, so he can't be compared to the other 9 elders. That's why he is ranked 10th. As for the sword heart, the palace lord trusts him the most, so he is in charge of it. Willow Tree said. I see. Qin Feiyang nodded and raised his head to look at the palace master of the Celestial Submission Palace. He smiled and said, sure, I'll return them to you. But you'll need to use the sword heart and the remaining 4 divine swords in exchange. The palace lord clenched his fists. Qin Feiyang smiled. I know you don't want to, but I believe you also understand that divine weapons can be found again, but people can't be found again. The palace master of Fengtian Palace was silent. Young master is right. To create 4 new level 10 false gods, I'm afraid it won't be easy even for the Fengtian Palace. Lu Mu looked at the palace lord of Fengtian Palace and smiled. The palace lord gritted his teeth and looked at Qin Feiyang. As you wish, deal. Qin Feiyang smiled. I like dealing with people like you who are straightforward and decisive. Wait a moment. With that, Feng Tiangong opened the teleportation gate and strode in. Awesome. Once he retrieves the sword heart and the remaining 4 divine artifacts, we will have obtained 12 divine artifacts this time. Yu Huang grinned. Lu Mu smiled and said, not 12, but 13. There's also a spatial divine item. Yes, yes, yes. Yu Huang nodded and looked at Qin Feiyang. Boy, you promised me a divine weapon, it's time to fulfill it. I've already prepared it for you. Qin Feiyang smiled. Is that so? Yu Huang was surprised. What kind of divine weapon are you going to give me? Fire. Qin Feiyang was about to say the fire lotus, but he stopped and asked, what kind of divine weapon do you want? Me? Yu Huang pondered for a moment. If only there was an armor like the one you're wearing. Armor. Qin Feiyang muttered, his eyes flashing slightly. He lowered his head to look at the one-armed old man below. The one-armed old man suddenly became alert. His heart filled with an uneasy premonition. Shua. Just as Qin Feiyang was about to speak, the palace lord of the palace lord appeared out of thin air. So fast. Qin Feiyang was surprised. Needless to say, this person was really a swift and decisive person. He couldn't help but admire this person. The palace lord of the palace lord waved his hand, and 5 streams of light broke through the air, rushing in front of Qin Feiyang. Impressively, there were 4 battle swords. And these 4 battle swords were exactly the same as the 5 battle swords that had been seized before. Beside the 4 battle swords, there was also a crystal. This crystal was about the size of a cobblestone. Like the battle sword, its entire body was scarlet red, and its edges were distinct. At first glance, it looked like a fiery red diamond, extremely beautiful. However, the space around the crystal was distorted at this moment. This was because the crystal was spewing out an invisible sword light. The feeling that this sword ray gave people was even more terrifying than the 9 battle swords. Willow Tree went up to check for a while, and gradually became happy. He turned to Qin Feiyang and nodded. It's true. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and collected all of them. Then he brought the black-clothed old man, and the other 3 out of the ancient castle. Palace Master. The 4 of them looked at the Fengtian Palace Lord and lowered their heads in shame. Victory and defeat are commonplace in war. Don't worry too much about it. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Please release them from your control. Don't worry. I've always been a man of my word. If I say I'll let them go, I'll definitely let them go. Qin Feiyang laughed and released the 4 of them from his control. With a wave of his hand, the 4 of them flew towards Palace Master Fengtian. The Palace Master of the Celestial Submission Palace opened the teleportation gate and did not linger. He did not say any harsh words and left with the 4 of them. I like this person very much. Qin Feiyang looked at the back of the Palace Master of the Celestial Submission Palace and laughed. Yo Huang's mouth twitched and said with disdain, You like the treasures on him, right? Don't talk nonsense. Do I look like that kind of person? Qin Feiyang's face darkened. Yu Huang looked at him seriously and nodded. Yes. Qin Feiyang shook his head helplessly and said, I really admire him. He doesn't hesitate at all. No wonder he's an overlord. Is the leader of the Vangu League also like him? Qin Feiyang murmured. He lowered his head again and looked at the one-armed old man. He smiled and said, Senior, let's settle the problem between us now. The one-armed old man raised his eyebrows and flew up to the sky. He stood opposite Qin Feiyang and said, Their battle suits were taken by you. How do you want to settle it? I won't deny it. I didn't do anything wrong. You don't know the situation at that time, so you may think that I deliberately hurt them. But in fact I didn't. Qin Feiyang said. Then what is it? The one-armed old man frowned. Qin Feiyang took Ning Yifeng and Zhao Ximing and said with a smile, You'd better ask them. Tell me, what's going on? The one-armed old man looked at the 2 and said angrily. The 2 stammered. Qin Feiyang glanced at the 2 and said to the one-armed old man, Forget it, let me tell you. At that moment. Thus, Qin Feiyang gave a simple explanation of what had happened. After listening, the one-armed old man's face turned pale. That treasure trove was actually a trap. Celestial Submission Palace, I won't let this go. The one-armed old man clenched his hands, and a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. He then looked at Ning Yifeng and Zhao Ximing and said angrily, What have we taught you? A person must know how to repay kindness. Can't you remember? Knowing that he won't let us go easily, are we still going to stand there and wait for death? You don't know what kind of person he is. What repay kindness with enmity? It's just an excuse for him to attack us. Zhao Ximing snorted coldly. Still quibbling. The one-armed old man blew his beard and glared. I'm telling the truth, I'm not quibbling. Zhao Ximing said stubbornly. Shut up. The one-armed old man was burning with anger and glared fiercely at Zhao Ximing. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, This matter, they are indeed in the wrong first. This old man apologizes to you on their behalf. If apologizing is useful, what's the use of law enforcement? Yu Huang sneered. Don't go too far. The great deacon is highly respected in the Black Tortoise world. For him to lower his status and apologize to you is already very flattering. Chapter 1596. Flatter us. Yu Huang started. She couldn't help but feel anger rising in her heart. How dare you be so arrogant in this situation? I've spoiled you. It raised its tail and slapped Zhao Ximing's face. With a bang, a blood-red mark immediately appeared on the ground. How dare you hit my face? Zhao Ximing touched her cheek and stared at Yu Huang angrily. So what if I hit you? Do you think we have to be polite to you in the Vanga League? Let me tell you in front of us, you'd better rein in your temper. Otherwise, not to mention slapping your face, this emperor will even dare to chop you up. Yu Huang snorted. Zhao Ximing's body trembled. Her face was full of fear. Yu Huang smiled in disdain. He looked at the one-armed old man and said impatiently, "Let's cut the crap. If you want their lives, give me something in return." The one-armed old man looked at Zhao Ximing and the other man and asked, "What do you want?" Yu Huang looked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and smiled. "How about this? Just like Fengtian Palace, give me 2 divine artifacts in exchange." As expected, the one-armed old man had actually expected such an outcome. However, asking for 2 divine artifacts at once was still beyond what he could afford. After all, divine artifacts were not cabbages that could be found everywhere. Even in the Vanga League he did not have many. The one-armed old man took a deep breath and smiled. "Young friend, do you know why I suddenly attacked Fengtian Palace? Are you trying to be friendly?" Qin Feiyang asked. "Yes. To be honest, I don't care about your strength," the one-armed old man said. "I believe you." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Although you are not a threat to the Vanga League, I have to be wary of the daggers in your hands. That's why I changed my mind and attacked Fengtian Palace. I think you should understand what I mean. Instead of fighting to the death and letting Fengtian Palace take advantage of the situation, why don't we work together?" the one-armed old man said. "Cooperation?" Qin Feiyang stared blankly for a moment before he joked. "What about the main tower? Aren't you going to avenge them?" "Revenge? At first, we did think of taking revenge for the main tower. In fact, before coming here, this old man was discussing this matter with the 2 alliance masters. But now this old man believes that there is no need for that," the one-armed old man said. "You're quite sensible," Willow Tree sneered. "A wise man submits to circumstances." The one-armed old man smiled. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Little brother, this old man sincerely hopes that I can make a friend like you. After saying so much, isn't it because you want us to return them to you? It's not that easy. We're not that easy to fool. You have to give me a divine artifact in exchange," Yu Huang said. The one-armed old man was a little annoyed. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Little brother, you've already offended the major forces in the Black Tortoise world. If you fall out with the Vanga League, I don't think it'll do you any good." "Haha. Willow Tree, did you see that? You're angry and started to threaten us." Yu Huang laughed. Willow Tree glanced at the one-armed old man and said calmly, "It's useless. The young master is not afraid of the Vanga League at all." Seeing Yu Huang and Willow Tree echoing each other, the one-armed old man was quite annoyed. "I'm not a 3-year-old kid. I won't change my mind just because of a few words from you. If you really want to work with me, wait until you give me the divine artifact and we'll talk." Qin Feiyang looked at the one-armed old man and said. The one-armed old man was furious and said, "Then what divine artifact do you want?" "I want a suit of armor that can shrink at will." After Qin Feiyang said that, he looked at the staff in the one-armed old man's hand and said with a smile, "That dog-beating staff in your hand looks pretty good too." The one-armed old man gripped the staff in his hand tightly, his expression extremely ugly. "Can't bear to part with it." "It's good that you can't bear to part with it, because this means that this dog-beating staff of yours is definitely not simple." "Alright, it's a happy decision then. Give me a suit of armor and the dog-beating staff in your hand." Qin Feiyang smiled. "Who's happy with your decision?" The one-armed old man was furious and said in a deep voice, "Young man, are you really not afraid of making the world your enemy?" "If I was afraid, I would have left the Black Tortoise world long ago. Why would I stay here until now?" Qin Feiyang said calmly. "All right. This old man will satisfy you." The one-armed old man spat out these words through gritted teeth. With a wave of his hand, he erased the blood contract on the staff and threw it to Qin Feiyang. Willow Tree took a step forward and caught the staff, asking, "Where's the armor?" The one-armed old man said, "This old man will go back and get it. Let one person go first." Trying to play tricks? Willow Tree sneered coldly. Even if you let one person go first, there's still one person in your hands. What tricks can this old man play? The one-armed old man said angrily. Hearing this, Willow Tree returned to Qin Feiyang's side and asked in a low voice, "What should we do?" Qin Feiyang sized up the one-armed old man. A light flickered in his eyes as he said, "Give Zhao Ximing to him." "All right." Willow Tree nodded. He grabbed Zhao Ximing and threw her over. The one-armed old man quickly waved his hand and false god force appeared, supporting Zhao Ximing. After Zhao Ximing stabilized her body, she quickly ran to the one-armed old man and said, "Great Deacon, you have to," but before she could finish, the one-armed old man waved his hand and stopped her. "If you have anything to say it when we get back." After that, he opened the portal. Zhao Ximing turned her head and glanced coldly at Qin Feiyang, then turned and ran into the portal. "I hope you won't do anything to him while I'm away." The one-armed old man looked at Qin Feiyang and said, then turned and entered the portal. "Young master, you have to be careful. The people of the Vanga League might not be as honest as those from Fengtian Palace," Willow Tree said in a low voice. "Don't talk nonsense. The people of the Vanga League are many times better than those from Fengtian Palace." Ning Yifeng snorted, his face full of dissatisfaction. "Don't think too highly of yourself. You think we don't know what kind of people the Vanga League is? Take the Chief Tower as an example. Although the Vanga League has been taking care of them all these years, you have also asked them to pay you tribute." Willow Tree sneered. "Tribute?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. Willow Tree nodded and said in disdain, "I heard that when the Chief Tower was seeking protection, the Vanga League gave them a condition. The Chief Tower must refine pills for the Vanga League for the rest of their lives, and they won't provide the herbs. The Chief Tower has to find the herbs themselves." Qin Feiyang was shocked and said, "Doesn't that mean they're taking it for free?" "They're taking it for free. In short, ever since the Chief Tower entered the Black Tortoise world, the Vanga League has been exploiting them. Since ancient times, the Vanga League has been using their strength to do whatever they want in the Black Tortoise world." Willow Tree sneered. "Isn't it the same for Fengtian Palace?" Ning Yifeng said angrily. Willow Tree said, "Although Fengtian Palace's style of doing things is very overbearing, at least they don't exploit any forces." Ning Yifeng was speechless. Not long after, a middle-aged man dressed in black descended in the sky above the group of people. "Who is it?" Willow Tree shouted and looked up at the middle-aged man. He frowned and asked, "Where's your chief deacon?" "What's wrong?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Willow Tree whispered, "This person is also from the Vanga League. His name is Gao Yuan, and he's also a pseudo-god." "He's also a deacon?" Qin Feiyang asked. "No. But he's also a senior figure in the Vanga League," Willow Tree said. Gao Yuan took a step forward and landed in front of them. He said, "The chief deacon suddenly has something to deal with, so he asked me to come and make a deal with you." "What a coincidence." Willow Tree was surprised. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said with a smile, "It doesn't matter. It's the same whoever comes, as long as they bring armor." Gao Yuan waved his hand, and a black armor flew out from his body and flew in front of Qin Feiyang. He said, "This armor can change its form at will. It can be used by humans or beasts." Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Yu Huang, try it." Yu Huang quickly dripped his blood to recognize it as its master. He was very excited. After successfully recognizing it as its master, the armor immediately appeared on its body. Except for a pair of eyes, its whole body was covered. "Not bad, not bad." Yu Huang smiled. Gao Yuan said, "We've already given you the conditions you asked for. Now you should let him go." Qin Feiyang let go of Ning Yifeng and said with a smile, "Don't run around in the future. It's very dangerous outside. It's not suitable for a young master like you." "Who said I'm a young master? I'm also ambitious, okay?" Ning Yifeng glared at Qin Feiyang angrily and flew toward Gao Yuan. Gao Yuan smiled and said, "Young master, you go back first. I still have something to discuss with Qin Feiyang and the others." "Discuss the matter of cooperation?" Ning Yifeng frowned. "Yes." Gao Yuan nodded. "For divine artifacts were robbed, And you still want to cooperate with him? This is so fucking frustrating. Ning Yifeng was very angry. He looked back at Qin Feiyang and opened the portal with a stomach full of dissatisfaction. He turned around and left. After the portal dissipated, Gao Yuan looked at Qin Feiyang and the others with a smile on his face. Qin Feiyang said, "Tell me, how do you want to cooperate?" The great deacon said that since ancient times, no one has ever dared to blackmail our Vanga League. You're the first, but also the last. Because you will die here soon. Gao Yuan chuckled. And his body suddenly exploded in the void. A wave of qi that could destroy the world suddenly rushed out in all directions with an earth-shattering momentum. This unforeseen event completely caught Qin Feiyang and the others off guard. They never thought that Gao Yuan would explode his physical body. One had to know. Gao Yuan was a pseudo-god. For a pseudo-god, what was more important than his life? How could he be willing to explode himself? That destructive aura rolled over. The willow tree and Yu Huang, who were standing in front of Qin Feiyang, were the first to bear the brunt of it. Blood gushed out of their mouths. Their physical bodies were also cracking. Even if Yu Huang had armor now, it could not block the power of the explosion. The armor was fine, but the flesh beneath the armor was bleeding profusely. However, in order to protect Qin Feiyang behind him, the man and the beast did not retreat half a step. The power of the pseudo-god roared out and desperately blocked the overwhelming air wave. "Young master, quick!" Chapter 1597. In the blink of an eye, Yu Huang and Willow Tree were covered in wounds and their bodies were almost torn apart. It could be seen how terrifying the power of a fake god's self-destruction was. Qin Feiyang hurriedly waved his hand and led everyone into the ancient castle. Boom! Crack! Outside, the mountains and earth within a radius of 10,000 miles were collapsing. The void shattered. Even the sky began to crack. It was as if doomsday had arrived, shocking the world. Inside the ancient castle, Qin Feiyang looked at this scene, and his face was extremely gloomy. How dare they plot against him? He couldn't forgive them. At the side, Willow Tree and Yu Huang were lying on the ground with blood all over their bodies. As soon as they entered the ancient castle, they passed out and their life fluctuations were also dissipating. The 6 great elders surrounded them and observed their injuries. They also gave them all kinds of life-saving pills. Lu Hong and the others also got up and looked at Yu Huang and Willow Tree worriedly. "How are their injuries?" Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice as he withdrew his gaze and looked at the 6 elders. "It's not good. Their physical injuries are only secondary. The most important thing is their souls. In order to protect you, they took the impact in front and their souls were almost torn apart. We have already given them the essence soul pills, but whether they can survive depends on themselves," the 6 elders said. "So serious?" Lu Hong and the others' hearts sank. Qin Feiyang's eyes became more and more terrifying. He asked, "How many essence soul pills did you give them?" 4. One of them said. "Not enough. Dan Wangkai, prepare the herbs. I'm going to start the furnace." Qin Feiyang said. "Yes." Dan Wangkai nodded and hurriedly ran to the front of the pill furnace to get busy. "You know how to refine pills too?" The 6 elders looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. Qin Feiyang didn't answer, and immediately turned the ancient castle around and flew away. "Where are we going?" Lu Hong asked. "I don't know. Let's find a place to hide first," Qin Feiyang said. "Hide?" Everyone was suspicious. Gao Yuan's self-destruction must have been ordered by the Vanga League. So later, they will definitely come to confirm whether I'm dead or not. Perhaps they are hiding somewhere nearby right now. A cold light flashed in Qin Feiyang's eyes. "You want to fake your death?" Fatso asked in surprise. "That's right. Let them be happy for a while. When Willow Tree and Yu Huang wake up, I will make them pay a heavy price. I want them to disappear from the Black Tortoise world, just like the main tower," Qin Feiyang said with a cold smile. When the 6 elders heard this, their scalps went numb. Destroy the Vanga League? In the entire Black Tortoise world, he was probably the only one who dared to think about it. Just as they had expected. When the destructive power of Gao Yuan's self-detonation gradually subsided, Two old figures flashed over from the distance like two bolts of lightning. One of them was the Grand Deacon. The other was an old woman. Her body was hunched over, and her hair was white. She held a walking stick in her hand, but her eyes weren't cloudy at all. They were like a pair of eagle's eyes. Is he dead? The old woman glanced at the ground and frowned. The power of a false divinity's self-destruction is comparable to a war god's all-out attack. Even a false divinity would die without a doubt, let alone a mere Qin Feiyang. The Grand Deacon snickered. The old woman released her divine will and covered the area. A few moments later, she raised her eyebrows and asked in surprise, "Where are the ancient castle and Changshui? Why can't I find them? Are they also destroyed?" Destroyed? The Grand Deacon was stunned and released his divine will as well. As expected, he couldn't find the ancient castle and Changshui. Let's not talk about the ancient castle first. Changshui is so powerful that it can even break the Azure Rainbow Sword. It shouldn't have been destroyed. And your sky-breaking stick is a level higher than the Azure Rainbow Sword. It shouldn't have been destroyed either. The old woman frowned and said. However, she didn't know that the ancient castle and Changshui were just as powerful. However, they weren't there when the ancient castle showed the power of laws. The people in the main tower were all killed by Zhuge Mingyang, so they didn't know anything. Could it be that someone beat us to it? The Grand Deacon raised his eyebrows. He didn't have any doubts and believed that Qin Feiyang and the others had died under Gao Yuan's self-destruction. Because he believed that Qin Feiyang and the others wouldn't be able to react when Gao Yuan self-destructed. Even if they did, they wouldn't be able to escape in time. Of course, the Grand Deacon couldn't be blamed for being self-righteous. Because this time, if it weren't for the willow tree and Yu Huang, Qin Feiyang would definitely die. There was no suspense. Gao Yuan self-destructed too suddenly, and without any hesitation. No one could react in time. But the willow tree and Yu Huang sacrificed themselves to save him, allowing him to escape. Who? Suddenly, the old woman roared. She raised her head and looked at the void hundreds of miles away. She saw a black-robed man running towards a teleportation gate without looking back. Li Yuan, stop right there. Although she could only see the back of the black-robed man, the old woman immediately recognized his identity. With a roar, she chased after him like lightning. We self-destructed a false god to kill Qin Feiyang, but your Fengtian palace took advantage of us. Damn it. Leave the divine artifact to us. The Grand Deacon was also furious. They thought that the divine artifacts on Qin Feiyang were all with the black-robed man. However, before the two of them could kill him, the black-robed man was teleported away by the portal. Damn it! Damn it! Looking at the portal dissipating, the two of them stomped their feet in anger. Above a towering mountain, an ancient castle quietly floated in the void. Inside, Qin Feiyang stood in front of the furnace, waving his hands again and again, calmly refining the essence soul pill. The 6 elders were all alchemy masters of the main tower. But when they saw Qin Feiyang's alchemy technique, they were shocked. This kind of skillful technique, this kind of calm demeanor, was not something that ordinary people could do, especially when refining the very complicated essence soul pill. The essence soul pill was a pill to repair the soul, and it was one of the most difficult pills to refine. Whether it was the control of the fire or the mental strength, the requirements were very high. And this man could do it with ease? This level of attainment was terrifying. Soon, 2 essence soul pills came out of the furnace. There were no flaws. 7 elixir patterns, like the halo of an angel, extremely eye-catching. How is this possible? It's actually 7 elixir patterns. The 6 elders were dumbfounded, staring at the 2 essence soul pills. Ling Zhuzi almost popped out. What's there to fuss about? Young Master's talent in alchemy is unparalleled in the entire Great Qin Empire and Forgotten Continent. It's just that usually, he disdains to refine ordinary pills. Wang Yuer didn't tell you? Dan Wangkai asked. When Wang Yuer was brought to the main tower, we hadn't even seen her yet, and you guys had already killed your way in. It's hard for us to know. The 6 of them smiled bitterly. They were really shocked in their hearts. Not only was his cultivation talent so monstrous, even his alchemy talent was so terrifying. Was he still human? While talking, Qin Feiyang had already put 2 essence soul pills into the willow tree and Yuhuang's mouths. Qin Feiyang continued to refine pills. For example, healing pills, bone replenishing pills, regeneration pills, and so on. In short, for all the medicinal pills that were useful to Lu Mu and Yuhuang, he concocted 2 of them. Finally, under Qin Feiyang's efforts, the willow tree and Yuhuang's injuries finally stabilized and gradually improved. A pill with 7 elixir patterns is indeed extraordinary. Yeah, it's several times more effective than a pill with 4 elixir patterns. The 6 elders sighed. If not for the pills refined by Qin Feiyang, it was really unknown whether the willow tree and Yuhuang would be able to survive. Of course, it was also thanks to them being false gods. When one reached the level of false god, whether it was the physical body, soul, or self-healing ability, they would all undergo a qualitative transformation. If it was a war emperor or a war saint, unless they had a divine pill or a flame of life, they would still die. If it was a cultivator below the war saint level, they would die on the spot. Phew. Qin Feiyang also let out a long sigh. But then, a strong murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Fengtian Palace. This colossus was located in the middle of a mountain range. The mountain range was undulating and there were fierce beasts everywhere. There was a giant mountain that towered into the sky like a giant sword. At the top of the mountain, a middle-aged man stood with his hands behind his back, facing the wind. He looked at the horizon and his deep eyes flashed with an inexplicable light. It was the palace master of Fengtian Palace. The place he was looking at was an endless sea. On the sea, the wind whistled and the waves surged. The strange thing was that the sea was black. Swish. Suddenly, a large man dressed in black appeared out of thin air behind the palace lord of the Celestial Tribute Palace. The palace master of Fengtian Palace seemed to have known that the man would come. He asked without turning his head, "Li Yuan, what's the situation?" Just as you expected, the Vanga League plotted against Qin Feiyang. They made Gao Yuan self-destruct. If you didn't give me the ancient city, I'm afraid I would have died under Gao Yuan's self-destruction. Li Yuan said with lingering fear. As he spoke, an ancient city the size of a palm flew out from between his eyebrows. Shockingly, this was also a spatial divine item. It wasn't hard to tell from Li Yuan's words that the owner of the ancient city was the palace master of Fengtian Palace. As the palace master of Fengtian Palace's space divine item, its level was definitely not low. What? The palace master of Fengtian Palace turned around and looked at Li Yuan in shock. He knew the Vanga League's style of doing things. He expected that they would definitely attack Qin Feiyang. So he asked Li Yuan to secretly monitor them. But he didn't expect that they would make a pseudo-god self-destruct. The Vanga League was really willing to go all out. After coming back to his senses, the palace master of Fengtian Palace put away the ancient city and asked, "What happened?" "He didn't die." Li Yuan shook his head. "He didn't die from the self-destruction of a pseudo-god?" The palace master of Fengtian Palace was stunned. Li Yuan said, "It was Willow Tree and Yuhuang who risked their lives to save him." "Impressive. How long has Willow Tree been with him? He was willing to risk his life for him. This kid is really something." "Where is he now?" the palace master of Fengtian Palace asked. "I'm not sure. When Gao Yuan self-destructed, the scene was too scary. I didn't dare to leave the ancient city, so I used my divine will to search for them. But I believe that after this incident, Qin Feiyang and the Vanga League will completely fall out." Li Yuan sneered. Chapter 1598. Li Yuan said, "Also, I overheard that the Grand Deacon wanted to work with Qin Feiyang to get rid of Palace Fengtian. Why did they fall out when they were talking about working together?" The palace master of Palace Fengtian was suspicious. "It's all because of Qin Feiyang. The Grand Deacon wanted Qin Feiyang to return Ning Yifeng and Zhao Ximing to him. But Qin Feiyang asked the Vanga League to give him an armor, and the Grand Deacon to give him the sky-breaking rod." Li Yuan smiled bitterly. The palace master of Palace Fengtian was stunned and asked, "Did the Grand Deacon give it to him?" "Yes. I guess it was at that time that the Grand Deacon wanted to kill him." Li Yuan said. "He was willing to do that." The palace master of Palace Fengtian was stunned. It can't be helped. Qin Feiyang asked for the sky-breaking rod. How dare he not give it to him? If he didn't give it to him, given Qin Feiyang's character, he would definitely kill Ning Yifeng and Zhao Ximing. Li Yuan smiled. The palace master of Palace Fengtian pondered for a while and said, "Now, does the Vanga League know that Qin Feiyang is still alive?" "No. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe that Qin Feiyang could still be alive," Li Yuan said. "No." The palace master of Palace Fengtian lowered his head and pondered. Li Yuan looked at the palace master of Palace Fengtian and asked tentatively, "Sir, are you also thinking of working with Qin Feiyang?" The palace master of Palace Fengtian was stunned. He looked at Li Yuan and said, "Do you think we can work with him?" "I think we can." Li Yuan nodded. "Why?" The palace master of Palace Fengtian asked. "The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Although Qin Feiyang killed our first elder and stole the 9 palaces sword formation and master's spatial divine item, it's nothing compared to destroying the Vanga League. As for Qin Feiyang's ability, you've seen it for yourself. Just the dagger in his hand is enough to make anyone tremble in fear. If Fengtian Palace joins the fray, it'll be a piece of cake to destroy the Vanga League." Li Yuan smiled. "I'm thinking the same thing." Fengtian Palace master nodded. Li Yuan asked suspiciously, "Then why are you still hesitating?" "As the palace lord of Fengtian Palace, I have to consider everything carefully. The destruction of the Vanga League is indeed a good thing for us. However, I'm worried that after we destroy the Vanga League, will Qin Feiyang attack Fengtian Palace again? If he really attacks us, we'll be beaten up because no one can do anything to that dagger." Fengtian Palace master said worriedly. Li Yuan nodded in understanding and said with a smile, "Actually, you don't have to worry about that at all." "What do you mean?" Fengtian Palace master asked in a daze. "Everyone knows that Qin Feiyang's target is the Tianyang Empire. After we destroy the Tianyang Empire, he'll leave. After all, no one wants to be trapped in the Black Tortoise world forever. After we destroy the Vanga League, we'll take the initiative to help him destroy the Tianyang Empire. If he still wants something else by then, we'll just give him some divine weapons or divine arts as long as he can leave the Black Tortoise world quickly. After he leaves, I'd like to ask Master, is there anyone here who can stop us from conquering the Black Tortoise world?" Li Yuan smiled. "Haha," Fengtian Palace master laughed and nodded. "That's right, we'll do as you say." "All right. I'll go look for him now. I think he should be near the Qingyang mountain range." "But there's something I need to remind you of, Master," Li Yuan said. "What is it?" Fengtian Palace master asked. "It's about the young master. Qin Feiyang ruined his plan and stole his divine spatial item. He'll definitely hold a grudge. What I'm worried about is that the young master might do something to anger Qin Feiyang. If that happens, it won't be easy to clean up the mess." Li Yuan said. "I understand what you mean. We can only be friends with Qin Feiyang, not enemies," Fengtian Palace master said. "Yes. We must restrain the young master, so that he won't ruin our plan," Li Yuan said in a deep voice. Fengtian Palace master said, "Don't worry. Before Qin Feiyang leaves the Black Tortoise world, I'll have someone keep an eye on him." "That's good. There's one more thing. When I left the Qingyang mountain range, I was discovered by the senior deacon and the second deacon. They all thought that I was the one who took Qin Feiyang's divine artifact and might come to Fengtian Palace to reason with you. You have to be prepared in advance," Li Yuan said. "How can they still have the face to reason with me? It's fine if they don't come. If they really dare to come, let's see how I humiliate them," Fengtian Palace master sneered. "Li Yuan, get the hell out here." Before he finished speaking, an angry roar sounded in the sky. That old bastard, he really came?" Fengtian Palace master was taken aback. He looked at Li Yuan and said, "Go find Qin Feiyang." "Okay." Li Yuan nodded and opened the portal. Suddenly he seemed to have thought of something. He looked at Fengtian Palace master and said, "We can't let the Vanga League know that Qin Feiyang is still alive." "I understand. Go," Fengtian Palace master said. Li Yuan glanced at the sky and entered the portal without looking back. At the same time, in the sky, a one-armed old man appeared. It was the Grand Deacon of the Vanga League. He stood in the sky and looked down. He immediately noticed Li Yuan and was furious. He rushed toward the portal and shouted, "Don't run. Let's talk face to face." "What do you want? This is not the Vanga League. You can't behave atrociously here." Feng Tian Palace Master stepped forward and shouted in front of the one-armed old man. "If you don't hand over Qin Feiyang's divine artifact, I'll really behave atrociously today." The one-armed old man shouted. His eyes were slightly red. Obviously, he was extremely angry. "What do you mean? Qin Feiyang's divine artifact? Are you crazy? Why did you come to Feng Tian Palace to ask for Qin Feiyang's divine artifact?" A few angry roars sounded. The 8 elders of Feng Tian Palace flew into the sky and glared at the Grand Deacon. The second elder, third elder, fourth elder, and fifth elder's injuries and Sea of Qi had all recovered. However, they did not know what happened after that. Therefore, they thought it was ridiculous when they heard the one-armed old man's voice. Looking at their expressions, the one-armed old man was even more furious. He shouted, "Don't play dumb with me. Hand it over." What a joke! Even if the divine artifact is in our hands, why should we hand it over to you? Who do you think you are? Get out of here, or don't blame me for not showing mercy. Feng Tian Palace Master shouted. His eyes were full of mockery. All right. Looks like Feng Tian Palace is really going to war with the Vanga League. The one-armed old man's face was distorted. He looked extremely ferocious. War? All right. I'll do as you wish. Beat him up. I'll take responsibility if he dies or cripples. Feng Tian Palace Master shouted. Hearing this, the 8 elders immediately attacked the one-armed old man. The one-armed old man did not expect Feng Tian Palace Master to really attack him. His face was full of panic. The reason for that was because the strength of each of the 8 elders was not inferior to his. In other words, he was here to be tortured. Back to Qin Feiyang. Although Willow Tree and Youhuang's injuries were recovering, he still did not leave. As for the divine artifact, he was not in the mood to care about it. Time passed little by little. About an hour later, Youhuang and Willow Tree finally woke up. However, they were still very weak. They could only barely open their eyes. It's good that you're fine. This was Willow Tree's first sentence when he woke up. He was talking to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang was extremely touched. He laughed and scolded. You're about to die, and you're still thinking about me? Willow Tree laughed and said, Aren't I fine? But his face was pale. The situation was obviously not as good as he said. Qin Feiyang supported Willow Tree and let him sit cross-legged on the ground. He smiled and said, Don't talk first, take care of your injuries. Okay. Willow Tree nodded. Qin Feiyang squatted on the ground again, holding Youhuang in his hands, and said gratefully, Thank you. Why are you thanking us? If you really want to thank us, give us a few more divine artifacts. Youhuang grinned. Qin Feiyang's face darkened. He had just woken up and he was already thinking about divine artifacts. Was he a miser? You can't bear to? I knew you were a stingy person. Youhuang pursed his lips. Qin Feiyang was helpless. But suddenly, he stood up, and a cold light surged in his eyes. What's wrong? Youhuang was shocked. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. A divine mind suddenly locked onto the ancient castle. Could it be that the people from the Vanga League found out that we're not dead and came after us? Everyone was surprised. Willow Tree and Youhuang were also very worried. Qin Feiyang put Youhuang on the ground and said with a smile, You guys take care of your injuries, I will take care of it. Qin Feiyang, is that you? A voice could be heard. This voice. It doesn't sound malicious. Everyone was stunned. If it's you, please come out for a while. I have something to discuss with you. The voice sounded again. Do what you need to do. I will go out and take a look. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed slightly as he looked at everyone. Young master, this may be a trap. You have to be careful. The 6 elders said. Willow Tree said, but this voice, it sounds familiar? It's okay. Qin Feiyang smiled at the 6 elders and left the ancient castle. He stood above a forest and looked at the void opposite him. In the void opposite him stood a burly man in black. His aura was unfathomable. Qin Feiyang secretly became vigilant, because he found that this person's aura was comparable to the one-armed old man. It's really you. When the burly man in black saw Qin Feiyang, there was a hint of surprise on his face. Who are you? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Oh my, I forgot to introduce myself. Chapter 1599. Li Yuan? The 10th elder? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "What are you doing here?" As he spoke, his eyes flashed coldly. Li Yuan quickly waved his hand and said, "Brother, don't misunderstand. I don't mean any harm. I'm here to cooperate with you." Cooperation? Qin Feiyang was surprised. One had to know. Not long ago, he killed the Grand Elder of the Palace of Fengtian and extorted a huge sum of money from the Palace of Fengtian. Now they were here to talk about cooperation? Li Yuan said, "Don't worry. We won't play dirty tricks behind your back like the Vanga League. I'm just wondering. I killed your people and stole your artifacts. Don't you hate me?" Qin Feiyang said. Li Yuan smiled and said, "There are no eternal enemies in this world. There are only eternal benefits. Brother, am I right?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. He nodded and smiled. "That's true. All right, I agree to cooperate with you." Li Yuan was overjoyed. Originally, he thought that Qin Feiyang would decline or make some conditions, but he didn't expect him to agree so readily. So much so that he couldn't use any of the words he had thought of to persuade Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang said, "Tell me, how do we cooperate and what do I get in return?" "Let's work together to destroy the Vanga League. After destroying the Vanga League, the Palace of Fengtian will help you destroy the Tianyang Empire." Li Yuan smiled. Qin Feiyang said, "You guys have a good plan. After destroying the Vanga League, the Palace of Fengtian can unify the Black Tortoise world and become the only overlord." "Yes." Li Yuan nodded. He didn't hide anything. Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled. "I like people like you. Unlike those hypocrites in the Vanga League. Just looking at them makes me sick." Li Yuan smiled awkwardly. Although he was praised by Qin Feiyang, he couldn't bring himself to be happy. This was because there was more or less a derogatory element in it. Qin Feiyang asked, "Can you represent Fengtian Palace and its palace master?" Li Yuan was taken aback and asked suspiciously, "Why do you ask?" Qin Feiyang said, "Since it's a cooperation, it must be mutually beneficial." Li Yuan said, "Didn't I say earlier that my Fengtian Palace will help you destroy the Heavenly Sun Empire?" "Not enough." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "Then what else do you want?" Li Yuan asked. He was rather perturbed. "Don't ask for too much again." Qin Feiyang said, "If you can make the decision, I'll talk with you. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time." Li Yuan hesitated. If it were anyone else, he would have dared to make the decision. But now he was facing Qin Feiyang, who knew what kind of outrageous demands he would make. With this thought in mind, Li Yuan smiled and said, "Since that's the case, then you should talk to the palace master face to face. Then lead the way." Qin Feiyang said, "Brother, you're such a straightforward person. Please." Li Yuan opened a teleportation door and retreated to the side. Qin Feiyang took a step forward and walked in. After Qin Feiyang entered, Li Yuan hurriedly followed. The next moment, Qin Feiyang landed in the air above a mountain peak. This was the place where Li Yuan and the palace master of Fengtian Palace had discussed an hour ago. Standing in the sky, Qin Feiyang scanned the mountains and rivers below. Giant peaks towered into the sky, exuding a majestic aura. Mountain stream. The grass and trees were vigorous, and the fierce beasts were galloping. A black river ran across the entire mountain, connecting to the Black Ocean on the other side. At the top of each giant peak, there was a great hall of an ancient castle. It was like an ancient beast lying on the top of the mountain, releasing an aura that made one's heart palpitate. And in those great halls, Qin Feiyang could clearly sense a terrifying aura. These auras were almost all false gods. This was a very terrifying place. However, what surprised Qin Feiyang the most was the Black River and the Black Ocean. Why was it so strange? At the same time, the palace master of Fengtian Palace was still standing on the top of the mountain. However, the elders had already left. But the one-armed old man was still there. At this moment, he was like a dead dog, lying on the ground in a sorry state, his body dripping with blood. As soon as Qin Feiyang appeared, the two of them sensed him and immediately looked at Qin Feiyang. It settled so quickly? The palace master of Fengtian Palace was stunned. Then a smile crept onto his face. How is that possible? The one-armed old man had a look of disbelief. Wasn't this person dead? Seeing Qin Feiyang looking at the sea in the distance, Li Yuan whispered, "Brother, the palace master is waiting for you below, and there's another surprise." Surprise? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He looked down at the top of the mountain. When he saw the one-armed old man, his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Whoosh! He landed on the top of the mountain and kicked the one-armed old man's penis without saying a word. Ah! The one-armed old man immediately let out a miserable howl. He covered his crotch and kept rolling on the ground. Li Yuan landed next to the palace master and snickered. It hurts just looking at him. The palace master shook his head and smiled. He has agreed to cooperate. Yes. But he seems to have a request and wants to talk to you face to face. Li Yuan said. As expected. The palace master smiled faintly. My lord, what's going on? Didn't you say that you only wanted to humiliate him? Why did you cripple him? Li Yuan looked at the one-armed old man and asked suspiciously. I only wanted to humiliate him and let him go. But after thinking about it, since I have to deal with the Vanga League sooner or later, I might as well take this opportunity to take him down. In this way, I will have one less powerful opponent when I face the Vanga League head-on in the future. At the same time, take it as a greeting gift for Qin Feiyang. The palace master smiled. This is a good greeting gift. Li Yuan smiled secretly. The one-armed old man almost killed Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang must hate him to the core. And this point, it could be seen from Qin Feiyang's current behavior. Therefore, this undoubtedly deepened their cooperation. Why aren't you dead? The one-armed old man was in excruciating pain and roared angrily. Do you want me to die so badly? It's a pity. I just can't die. I wonder if you've heard of this saying? Cleverness overreaches itself. If you didn't plot against me in the Qingyang Mountains, we might have formed an alliance and eliminated Fengtian Palace together. But you pushed me to Fengtian Palace. Facing the anger of me and Fengtian Palace, I'm really curious. Can your Vanga League survive? Qin Feiyang sneered. What? You formed an alliance with Fengtian Palace? The one-armed old man's eyes trembled. Qin Feiyang and Fengtian Palace teamed up. This was a disaster for the Vanga League. Yes. We've formed an alliance. I have to thank you for your help. Otherwise, I wouldn't have found this opportunity. The palace master of Fengtian Palace smiled. The one-armed old man forgot his pain. His heart was shrouded by a shadow of despair. The palace master of Fengtian Palace smiled coldly and looked at Qin Feiyang. Little brother, do you want to kill him? No hurry. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and stepped on the one-armed old man. He looked at the palace master and said, I have 2 requests. Speak. The palace master of Fengtian Palace said. Qin Feiyang said, First, the Vanga League and the Tianyang Empire's treasure trove and herb fields will all belong to me. No problem. The palace master of Fengtian Palace nodded without hesitation. Although the Vanga League and the Tianyang Empire's wealth was huge and tempting, it was nothing compared to unifying the Black Tortoise world. When Fengtian Palace unifies the Black Tortoise world, all the resources in the Black Tortoise world would belong to Fengtian Palace. As long as Qin Feiyang was satisfied, it didn't matter what he wanted. Second, when I leave the Black Tortoise world, I don't care what Fengtian Palace is planning, but you must give Willow Tree and the 6 elders a place to live, and promise that you will never harm them. Of course, before I leave, I will remind them not to offend Fengtian Palace. Qin Feiyang said. As long as they don't stir up trouble, I can promise that I will not harm them. The palace master of Fengtian Palace pondered for a while, and smiled at Qin Feiyang. All right, let our alliance begin, Qin Feiyang said. Then I wish us a happy cooperation. The palace master of Fengtian Palace smiled and extended his hand. Happy cooperation. Qin Feiyang also extended his hand and shook hands with the palace master of Fengtian Palace. It's over, the one-armed old man murmured. Qin Feiyang's foundation was already terrifying enough. He had 8 false gods under his command and a divine artifact. Coupled with the palace master of Fengtian Palace, would the Vanga League be able to stop them? Just thinking about it made his scalp tingle. He hurriedly said, Qin Feiyang, let's work together. The palace master of Fengtian Palace and Li Yuan raised their eyebrows. Qin Feiyang pursed his lips and said lightly, There's no medicine for regret in this world. I know I've gone overboard. But now I know I was wrong. And I can promise you that the benefits you get from working with the Vanga League will be much greater than working with the palace master of Fengtian Palace. The one-armed old man said. Is that so? Qin Feiyang looked at him mockingly. Yes. I can also promise you that after we get rid of the palace master of Fengtian, Willow Tree will be on the same level as the Vanga League. In fact, I can even give you 2 more divine artifacts after this is done, the one-armed old man said. The palace master of Fengtian Palace and Li Yuan became nervous when they heard this. Qin Feiyang was stunned and said, So, the Vanga League has a lot of divine artifacts? Yes. The one-armed old man nodded. Not bad. Qin Feiyang laughed and turned to look at the palace master of Fengtian Palace. He said, The Vanga League's divine artifacts. He stopped halfway through his sentence. The palace master of Fengtian Palace was puzzled at first. He did not know what Qin Feiyang was trying to say. But with Li Yuan's reminder, he suddenly understood. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, Don't worry, I promised the palace master of Fengtian Palace that I won't fight with you for it. At the same time, he was secretly relieved. It seemed that Qin Feiyang would not change his mind now. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded and looked down at the one-armed old man. He said, What do you think after hearing our plan? You said it deliberately for me to hear? The one-armed old man was stunned. That's right. I want you to taste the despair of knowing our plan, but being unable to stop it. Chapter 1600. The one-armed old man was enraged. After living for so many years, when had he ever been toyed with like this? I can swear that you will regret this. The people of Fengtian Palace are not as simple as you think. The sincerity they're showing now is all a lie. He roared. You still want to sow discord? What a joke. The people of Fengtian Palace aren't that great, but they are many times better than the Vanga League. Li Yuan sneered. I know how to flatter myself too. The one-armed old man sneered. All right, don't waste your time. Even if what you said is true, I won't choose to work with the Vanga League. You should think about how to face the wrath of Willow Tree and Yu Huang. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and sent the one-armed old man to the castle. Li Yuan asked curiously, Brother, are Yu Huang and Willow Tree still alive? No. Qin Feiyang nodded. Li Yuan and the palace master of Fengtian Palace looked at each other. They were really lucky to be alive. Li Yuan smiled. That's great. With the 2 of them, it will be easier for us to destroy the Vanga League. Qin Feiyang glanced at him and asked, Are you serious? Li Yuan's body stiffened and he quickly nodded. Of course. The corners of Qin Feiyang's mouth curled up into a meaningful smile. The palace master of Fengtian Palace quickly changed the topic and asked, Little brother, when do we make our move? When Willow Tree and Yu Huang recover from their injuries. Qin Feiyang smiled and looked at the Black Sea. Is that the Nether Sea, one of the 4 forbidden lands in the Black Tortoise world? Yes. The palace master of Fengtian Palace nodded. Qin Feiyang asked curiously, What's in the Nether Sea? Everything. But it's also very dangerous. That's because the water of the Netherworld Sea can corrode one's soul. Only false gods can enter. The palace master of the Imperial Conferring Palace said. How big is the Netherworld Sea? Qin Feiyang asked again. It's huge. Even I would need 3 days to reach the end of the Netherworld Sea. Furthermore, there are a lot of islands in the Nether Sea, and there are quite a few demigod realm beasts residing on those islands. Once they are disturbed, the consequences will be unimaginable. The palace master of the Imperial Conferring Palace said. A demigod beast, Qin Feiyang murmured. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, he turned to look at the 2 palace masters of the Celestial Worship Palace and said, I heard from Willow Tree that you and the Vanga League have set a rule. People from the Black Tortoise world are not allowed to kill demigod dire beasts. Why is that? It has something to do with the one above. The palace master of Celestial Submission Palace pointed at the sky, his words extremely obscure. Guardian? Qin Feiyang frowned. The palace master of Celestial Submission Palace's expression changed, and he hurriedly whispered, Little brother, the name of the guardian can only be understood, not spoken. Otherwise it will bring disaster. Qin Feiyang was stunned, and a trace of disdain flashed in his eyes. Both of them saw it and couldn't help but mutter in their hearts. This was a typical example of a newborn calf not being afraid of a tiger. But they didn't know. They regarded the guardian of the Grim Reaper, and they were almost killed by Qin Feiyang. The palace master of Celestial Submission Palace said, Little brother, I have a question to ask. Go ahead. Qin Feiyang said. When you entered the Black Tortoise world, did you see a fire dragon? The palace master of Celestial Submission Palace asked. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded and asked, What's wrong? Then, how did you come in at that time? The palace master of Celestial Submission Palace and Li Yuan were both curious. Qin Feiyang said, If I say that I killed it, would you believe me? This joke isn't funny at all. Li Yuan was speechless. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. He knew that no one would believe him. He said indifferently, I took advantage of the time when it was sleeping to sneak in. The palace master of Celestial Submission Palace said, Then when you leave the Black Tortoise world, you must be careful, don't make any noise and wake it up. I know. Qin Feiyang nodded. All right then. I'll go and make preparations to destroy the Vanga League. Li Yuan, arrange a place for this little brother to rest for a few days. The palace master of Celestial Submission Palace said. Qin Feiyang said, No need, I'll just rest in the castle. All right. I'll have Li Yuan stay here, if you need anything, just tell him. The palace master of Celestial Submission Palace smiled. Qin Feiyang nodded. The palace master of Celestial Submission Palace said a few more words to Li Yuan, then turned around and left. After watching the palace master leave, Li Yuan retracted his gaze and smiled. Brother, our palace master is a good person. I like his straightforwardness. However, I believe that you should know that I hate people who only listen to me behind my back. Qin Feiyang said. I understand. Li Yuan nodded repeatedly. Qin Feiyang glanced at him and went straight into the castle. What a scary young man. After Qin Feiyang left, Li Yuan was sweating profusely. Although he could defeat Qin Feiyang in a second in terms of cultivation, Qin Feiyang's every gaze seemed to carry an invisible deterrent force. Especially that extraordinary insight and sensitivity. It made people uncontrollably flustered. Being enemies with such a person really made one unable to eat or sleep well. Inside the castle, the one-armed old man was curled up in a corner. No one paid attention to him, but when he saw Qin Feiyang appear, his eyes were filled with hatred. Qin Feiyang ignored him and looked at Fatso, asking, Did you take his Qinquan bag? I've searched it, no. It should have been taken by the palace master of Celestial Submission Palace. Fatso said. Qin Feiyang nodded and glanced at Mu Xingxing, who was also curled up in a corner, then looked at Dan Wangkai and said, We've seized a lot of Qinquan bags in the past 2 days, right? The Qinquan bags of Mu Xingxing, Pei Yunchang, the head of the pagoda, Shirlan, the 5 elders of Celestial Submission Palace, Ning Yifeng, Zhao Ximing, and the others are all with me. Dan Wangkai nodded. These people are either false gods or disciples of rich families, so they must have a lot of herbs. Sort them out as soon as possible. But you don't have to report to me. You can do it yourself. But if you find the godly spell, remember to give it to me. Qin Feiyang said. Okay. Dan Wangkai said. Qin Feiyang withdrew his gaze, took out the long stick he took from the one-armed old man, and lowered his head to ponder. Judging from the aura, this godly artifact was a level higher than the rainbow sword and the seven-star sword. Who should he give it to? Fatso and Lu Hong both had godly artifacts. Willow Tree and Yu Huang also had godly artifacts. As for himself, he had Changshui, the ancient castle, and the fire lotus, so he didn't need it. Qin Feiyang suddenly looked at Wolf King. It seemed that this guy didn't have a godly artifact yet. He couldn't help but feel ashamed. Along the way, the white-eyed wolf had helped him many times. Especially the people in the spiritual state, the white-eyed wolf had saved him many times. How could he forget about this guy now? Qin Feiyang shook his head, threw the long stick to the white-eyed wolf, and said with a smile, "Although you can't revive now, you can keep it for self-defense." "You finally remembered me? I thought you would always ignore me." The white-eyed wolf glared at Qin Feiyang with dissatisfaction, grabbed the long stick happily, and rubbed it lovingly. "Boss Wolf, you've made a fortune. This long stick is called the Sky-Breaking Stick, and it's a level higher than the seven-star sword in my hand." Willow Tree opened his eyes and looked at the white-eyed wolf. "Really?" The white-eyed wolf was surprised. "Of course. As the Grand Deacon of the Vanga League, how can the godly artifact be too weak? I think it's on the same level as the fire lotus in the young master's hand." Willow Tree nodded. "Not bad, not bad. Have a taste of my dog-beating stick." The white-eyed wolf nodded, jumped up, and rushed to Mu Xingkong, and gave him a good beating. "Bastard! Why did you hit me for no reason?" Mu Xingkong screamed and roared. "I don't like you, okay?" The white-eyed wolf smirked and hit Mu Xingkong's head with the stick. Blood immediately spurted out. Mu Xingkong fainted on the spot, and fell to the ground. "Poor kid." Willow Tree shook his head, and his eyes were full of sympathy. Facing the white-eyed wolf, even if he didn't die, he would lose a layer of skin. Qin Feiyang also shook his head and smiled. He walked to the altar, opened the 6 words divine formula, and continued to copy the 6th stroke of the Xing formula. The 6th stroke was also the last stroke. He was looking forward to seeing how powerful the Xing formula was. Time flew by. Half a month had passed in the castle. Only a day and a half had passed in the outside world. Willow Tree and Yu Huang's injuries had healed. The 6 great elders had also adjusted to their best state after half a month of cultivation. Dan Wangkai also sorted out all the Qianquan bags, as well as the medicinal materials looted from Peach Blossom City last time. There were all kinds of medicinal materials, medicinal pills, gold coins, and countless. There were at least hundreds of perfect battle arts and perfect auxiliary battle arts. But he didn't find any divine arts and artifacts. However, Dan Wangkai was already very satisfied, because these medicinal materials and battle arts were comparable to a big treasure. And he also found a lot of Kuei water essence, Ewood essence, 6th earth essence, 4th fire essence, and 8th gold essence. In other words, now whether it was the spirit congealing pill, great creation pill, or 5 elements universe pill, they could all be refined in large quantities. And after Willow Tree and Yu Huang recovered, the first one they took care of was the one-armed old man. His ending was naturally quite miserable. He was even tortured to kneel and beg for mercy. However, although Willow Tree and Yu Huang had recovered, Qin Feiyang didn't immediately stop copying the Xing formula. It wasn't until the next morning that he retracted his arm and closed the 6 words formula. Outside, the sun rose, the morning sun shone on the earth, and everything gradually woke up. Qin Feiyang turned to look at Willow Tree, Yu Huang, and the 6 great elders. Willow Tree, Yu Huang, and the 6 great elders also knew that a great battle was about to begin, and they all got up to look at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and 6 battle swords appeared and flew to the 6 great elders. The 6 great elders were excited. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "It's not for you, it's just for you to kill the enemy temporarily." When the 6 heard this, a trace of disappointment suddenly crept up on their faces. But they didn't say much. They were already satisfied that Qin Feiyang didn't kill them. One after another, they dripped blood to recognize the master, and put away the battle swords. "Are you ready?" Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and asked. Yes. Everyone nodded. Then let's go. A cold light flashed in Qin Feiyang's eyes, and he took a group of people and left the castle murderously. Chapter 1601. Outside. For the past 2 days, Li Yuan had been meditating. As soon as he sensed the aura of Qin Feiyang and the others, he immediately opened his eyes. When he saw that Willow Tree and Yu Huang had already recovered to their peak state, a look of disbelief flashed across his eyes. After suffering such serious injuries, they actually recovered in just 2 days? Are you kidding me? Could it be that they have divine pills? Qin Feiyang saw Li Yuan's doubts, but did not explain. He said, Inform the palace master that we will set off immediately. Okay. Li Yuan hurriedly nodded and got up to look at Willow Tree and Yu Huang, as if he was looking at monsters. Whoosh! Immediately after, he turned into a stream of light and disappeared like lightning. Everyone listen up. Gather here quickly. Soon. A voice filled with murderous intent echoed from the top of a mountain. Qin Feiyang looked up and saw the palace master of Fengtian Palace standing in the sky, his aura shaking the void and earth. Whoosh! As soon as the palace master of Fengtian Palace finished speaking, figures rushed out of the halls on the giant peaks one after another. These people were men and women, old and young. But without exception, they all emitted the aura of a false god. There was not even a single war emperor. Qin Feiyang said in surprise. Is this Fengtian Palace full of false gods? Not really. This is the holy land of Fengtian Palace, so only false gods are qualified to live here. Of course, Li Chang is another matter. Willow Tree said. What about the others? Qin Feiyang asked. Willow Tree turned around and pointed to a mountain in front of them. The disciples below the war emperor level, including the family members of the false gods, are all over there. Qin Feiyang turned his head and looked over. The place where Willow Tree pointed was thousands of miles away. That place was also filled with strange peaks and precipitous ridges, with layers upon layers of mountains. But in comparison, the mountains there were much inferior to the Holy Land. They did not have the kind of majestic aura that could shock one's soul. However, one could faintly see that there was an ancient city located in the mountains. But the city wasn't big. It covered an area of several miles. This meant that the population was not large either. That city is called Sky Tribute City. No matter if it's the Vanga League or Fengtian Palace, they don't recruit unless they're extremely talented. Therefore, most of the people in Reverence City are descendants of the false gods in Reverence Palace. Some fake gods have already passed away, but their descendants are still in Sky Tribute City. However, both of them are somewhat inhumane. Willow Tree said. Inhumane? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Yes. They will only keep those who can cultivate. Like those who don't have the talent for cultivation, once they reach the age of 16, they will be chased out of Sky Tribute City. They will be sent out to get married and have children, fending for themselves. However, the two great powers didn't exterminate them either. If the descendants of those who were expelled have talent for cultivation, they can return to Sky Tribute City. Of course, this is only limited to their descendants. Willow Tree said. Why? We're all humans. Why do we have to treat them differently? Yu Huang said angrily. This is the way of the world. No one wants to waste time on a worthless person. Willow Tree said calmly. He was obviously used to it. Worthless, Qin Feiyang muttered, a trace of disgust in his eyes. Because he knew the feeling of being expelled better than anyone else. As Yu Huang said, this was a very unfair action. However, in this world, there was nothing fair. Everything was decided by the fist. Not long later, the palace master of Fengtian Palace brought a group of people and flew towards Qin Feiyang and the others. Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze and turned to look at the palace master of Fengtian Palace. He didn't know if he didn't look, but when he did, he was shocked. Behind the palace master of Fengtian Palace, there were no less than 50 people. In other words, there were at least 50 false gods in Fengtian Palace. This foundation was too terrifying, wasn't it? 50 false gods. Even the entire Great Qin Empire and Forgotten Continent combined didn't have that many. That's not all. Because I didn't see the Vice Palace Master of Fontian Palace. I think she should have brought some people with her to guard Fontian Palace. Willow Tree said in a low voice. Not all. Qin Feiyang sucked in a breath of cold air. If he had such a foundation, what was the Imperial Preceptor? What was Mu Tianyang? He could destroy him with a wave of his hand. The Palace Master of Fontian Palace landed in front of Qin Feiyang and smiled. Little brother, are you satisfied with the overall strength of my Fontian Palace? Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled, asking. They already know our plan? Yes. I already told them yesterday. The Palace Master of Fontian Palace nodded. Yesterday? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Is there a problem? The Palace Master of Fontian Palace was suspicious. Qin Feiyang asked. Forgive me for asking, but can the people here be trusted? The Palace Master of Fontian Palace was taken aback, then said, So you're worried about the news being leaked? You can rest assured because everyone here is my family. Everyone is your family? Qin Feiyang was surprised. You misunderstood me. What I meant is that Fontian Palace is a big family. Everyone is one family. The Palace Master of Fontian Palace said. Since we're all family, why did you expel those who don't have the talent for cultivation from the Fontian Palace? Don't you think it's a slap in the face for saying such words? Yu Huang said with disdain. The Palace Master of Fontian Palace's smile froze, shaking his head. I'm just saying that you don't understand the human world. Stop bragging. You haven't seen a pig run, but you haven't eaten pork? I'm still wondering, even if you keep them, how much land and food can they occupy? Is there a need to be so cruel? Yu Huang laughed angrily. Qin Feiyang said unhappily. Enough, it's other people's business. Why do you care so much? I just can't stand their behavior. They're even more cruel than us beasts. Yu Huang snorted coldly. The Palace Master of Fontian Palace looked embarrassed and said, Although you're a beast, your words are reasonable, making me ashamed. When the Black Tortoise world is unified, I think this rule should be abolished. That's right. Whether they have cultivation talent or not, they're all humans and should be treated equally. To be able to admit your mistakes and change, you're not hopeless. Yu Huang smiled. Yes, yes, yes. The Palace Master of Fontian Palace nodded. Qin Feiyang was speechless. What's wrong with this guy? As a beast, he's actually speaking up for the humans? He was sure that the group of fake gods behind the Palace Master of Fontian Palace must be muttering in their hearts. This guy is different. Different from the other beasts. However, this could be considered a good thing. After all, there weren't many kind beasts, and it was his good luck to be able to meet one. Seeing that even the Palace Master of Fontian Palace was tamed by him, Yu Huang was very proud and shouted, Then let's go. The Palace Master of Fontian Palace turned to look at the fake gods and shouted, Listen, when we reach the Vanga League, don't talk nonsense, attack directly and leave no one alive. Yes. Everyone nodded. The Palace Master of Fontian Palace shouted, Open the portal. Everyone opened up a portal. This was to save time. The Palace Master of Fontian Palace also opened a portal, and a shocking murderous aura broke out from his body. He waved his hand and shouted, Let's go. Everyone stepped into the portal in unison. Qin Feiyang also led Willow Tree and the others into the portal of the Palace Master of Fontian Palace. The next moment, a group of people descended on the plains. The plains were extremely vast, and the vegetation was lush. The surrounding mountains were like giant dragons lying on the ground. In the middle of the plains, a huge city stood majestically, covering an area of more than 10 miles. The dark city walls and tall buildings all exuded an ancient aura. However, there was not a single person in the entire city at this moment. It was an empty city. What's going on? Willow Tree, Yu Huang, and the 6 elders scanned the city in surprise. Why is this happening? The Palace Master of Fontian Palace, Li Yuan, and a group of fake gods were also frozen in the void. Qin Feiyang turned to look at the Palace Master of Fontian Palace and said in a deep voice, This is the Vanga League? The palace master of Fengtian Palace nodded. Where are they? Don't tell me they have the ability to predict the future. Qin Feiyang said angrily. How would I know? The palace master of Fengtian Palace was also a little angry. It won't be easy to evacuate such a large city. There's only one explanation. The Vanga League had already received the news and evacuated everyone in advance. That means there are spies in your palace master of Fengtian Palace. Qin Feiyang looked at the palace master of Fengtian Palace and said. Hearing this, the hearts of Willow Tree, Yu Huang, and the 6 elders sank as they scanned the fake gods around the palace master of Fengtian Palace. Impossible. The palace master of Fengtian Palace shook his head. Qin Feiyang said. Then tell me, why would they disappear all of a sudden? The palace master of Fengtian Palace remained silent as he looked at Li Yuan and the other fake gods. My lord, you can suspect others but you can't suspect me. I've followed you for so many years. Don't you know what kind of person I am? Li Yuan hurriedly said. The others also spoke up to prove their innocence. The palace master of Fengtian Palace turned to look at Qin Feiyang and asked. Could there be another reason? We're the only ones who know about this plan. How could there be another reason? Qin Feiyang said angrily. What's going on? The palace master of Fengtian Palace was furious. Everything was ready, but the people were gone? It was as if there was a beautiful woman standing in front of him with her pants down and spear ready. But the woman suddenly told him that she had a relative and couldn't do it today. It was extremely uncomfortable. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while, and looked at the palace master of Fengtian Palace. He asked, Did the Vanga League ask you for people in the past 2 days? Ask for people? The palace master of Fengtian Palace was taken aback and asked. Who? The Grand Deacon, of course. Qin Feiyang said. No. The palace master of Fengtian Palace shook his head. That's right. The Vanga League must have known that the Grand Deacon went to your palace master of Fengtian Palace. Even if they didn't know, they must have guessed it. He hasn't returned for 2 days. They must be worried. But they didn't do anything. They didn't even ask. What does this mean? It means that they already know that the Grand Deacon is in my hands and gave up on rescuing him. So I'm sure that there's a Vanga League spy in your palace master of Fengtian Palace. Chapter 1602. Who is it? Get the hell out here. The palace master of Fengtian Palace was furious as he roared at the group of fake gods beside him. Everyone looked at each other with a perplexed expression. Why would the spy admit it? Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. Do you have any ideas? The palace master of Fengtian Palace thought to himself. Qin Feiyang looked at the group of people's expressions as his eyes flickered. He had to find the spy. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to hide anything from the Vanga League in the future. Wait. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang's eyelids twitched. If the Vanga League received the news, would the people of the Tianyang Empire also receive the news? Because this plan also included eliminating the Tianyang Empire. He quickly looked at Willow Tree and said in a deep voice, Go to Tianyang City immediately and take a look. Go to Tianyang City? Willow Tree was stunned. Go now. Qin Feiyang shouted. Willow Tree nodded and quickly opened a portal to leave. The palace master of Fengtian Palace glanced at Willow Tree's back and transmitted his voice. Little brother, do you suspect that the Vanga League also informed the Tianyang Empire? I can't rule out that possibility, because if it were me, I would do the same. Qin Feiyang thought to himself. After all, the Tianyang Empire wasn't weak. Faced with the alliance between him and the palace master of Fengtian Palace, the Vanga League would definitely form an alliance with the Tianyang Empire. Where is the Soul Sealing Valley? Qin Feiyang asked. Over there. The palace master of Fengtian Palace pointed to the end of the plain. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed as he transmitted his voice. Take me there and let the others stay here. Okay. The palace master of Fengtian Palace nodded and turned to Li Yuan and the others. You guys stay here. I will go to the Soul Sealing Valley with this little brother. Yes. Everyone replied respectfully. Qin Feiyang glanced at Yu Huang and the 6 elders. He thought to himself, you guys stay here as well, See if anyone will find an excuse to leave when Palace Master and I leave. What do you mean? Yu Huang was suspicious. If someone finds an excuse to leave, it's very likely that they have a guilty conscience. In that case, that person might be a spy, Qin Feiyang thought. Understood. Yu Huang nodded imperceptibly. Qin Feiyang nodded to the Palace Master, and the Palace Master immediately led Qin Feiyang to the Soul-Sealing Valley. Not long after, Qin Feiyang saw the entrance of a valley. The entrance was very small. Beside the entrance stood a tall stone tablet with 3 bold words engraved on it. Soul-Sealing Valley. This place must be empty as well. Before they even entered, the Palace Master of the Sky-Conferring Palace said decisively. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. The Palace Master of the Sky-Conferring Palace said, there used to be someone guarding this stone tablet, but now there's no one, which means that they have already left. Qin Feiyang nodded. Looking at the entrance of the Soul-Sealing Valley, he said, I'm very curious about this Soul-Sealing Valley. Let's go in and take a look. You can't go in. The Palace Master of the Sky-Conferring Palace shook his head. Why? Qin Feiyang frowned. Because there's a strange power in the Soul-Sealing Valley that can seal the soul of a living being. Once the soul is sealed, it will immediately petrify and turn into a stone statue. Only pseudo-gods can enter. The Palace Master of the Sky-Conferring Palace said. So scary? Qin Feiyang was shocked. Yes. Although we can't go in, we can go to the sky and see the appearance of the Soul-Sealing Valley. The Palace Master of the Sky-Conferring Palace said. Qin Feiyang nodded, followed behind the Palace Master, and rushed into the sky above the entrance. The appearance of the Soul-Sealing Valley immediately appeared in front of Qin Feiyang's eyes. This Soul-Sealing Valley was very big. Even with Qin Feiyang's current cultivation, he was still unable to see the whole picture. Inside the valley, there were mountains and countless small valleys. These small valleys crisscrossed and were extremely complicated, like a maze. However, in the valley, other than humans and beasts, there were everything else. For example, flowers and trees, medicinal herbs, spirit essence, rivers, streams. If he didn't know in advance that this was a big forbidden area of the Black Tortoise realm, Qin Feiyang would definitely think that this was just a slightly more complicated maze valley. Will it really be petrified? Qin Feiyang asked. He always felt that the words of the Palace Master of the Sky-Conferring Palace were somewhat unbelievable. The Palace Master of the Sky-Conferring Palace did not reply, but turned and flew away. Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. Soon, a beast roar sounded. Following closely, the Palace Master of the Sky-Conferring Palace flew over with a War Emperor-level beast. Above the entrance, the Palace Master of the Sky-Conferring Palace did not say anything and directly threw the beast into the Soul-Sealing Valley. The moment the beast fell into the Soul-Sealing Valley, its huge body was immediately petrified. Looking at this scene, Qin Feiyang took a deep breath. This was too terrifying. Now you believe it. You also saw my sincerity. If I had the intention to harm you, I wouldn't have told you this and directly brought you in. The Palace Master of the Sky-Conferring Palace laughed. Qin Feiyang nodded and asked, then how to remove the petrification? Leaving the Soul-Sealing Valley, the petrification will naturally disappear. However, if it is broken by someone in the state of petrification, then even a pseudo-god will die on the spot. The Palace Master of the Sky-Conferring Palace said. When Qin Feiyang heard this, he couldn't help but break out in cold sweat, his eyes full of fear, and asked, then this petrification ability, what is the cause of it? No matter what, there was a source. This petrification must have come from something. I don't know. I'm afraid that only the Vanga League knows the reason. The guardian of the miracle should also know. When I had nothing to do, I also thought about this matter. According to my guess, the biggest possibility is that there is a terrifying demon hidden in the Soul-Sealing Valley. The Palace Master of the Sky-Conferring Palace said. Demon. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. The Palace Master of the Sky-Conferring Palace laughed. Little brother, don't think about it now. If you really want to find the answer, wait until you break through to the pseudo-god level. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly, glanced at the soul-sealing valley and said, "Let's go back." Whoosh! The two of them returned the way they came. But suddenly, Qin Feiyang stepped on the brakes and suddenly turned his head to look at the soul-sealing valley. "What's wrong?" The palace master of the sky-conferring palace was shocked. Qin Feiyang was silent, scanning the valley, his eyes flashing coldly. But gradually, he frowned, and a trace of suspicion crept up on his face. The palace master of the sky-conferring palace asked anxiously, "Little brother, don't scare me. What's wrong?" "I suddenly felt that there seemed to be a gaze spying on me in the soul-sealing valley." Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. The palace master of the sky-conferring palace was stunned and said, "If there is really someone spying on me, even you can feel it. But just now I didn't feel it at all." "Is it an illusion?" Qin Feiyang murmured. "It must be an illusion," the palace master of the sky-conferring palace said. "No, I don't believe in illusions." Qin Feiyang shook his head, turned to look at the palace master of the sky-conferring palace, and said, "Why don't you go in and take a look?" Seeing that Qin Feiyang was not joking, the palace master of the sky-conferring palace glanced at the soul-sealing valley for a moment and nodded. "Okay, I'll go in and take a look. You have to be careful." "Okay," Qin Feiyang replied. The palace master of the sky-conferring palace immediately turned into a stream of light and rushed into the soul-sealing valley. Just as the palace master of the sky-conferring palace disappeared into the depths of the soul-sealing valley, a sinister laugh suddenly sounded in Qin Feiyang's mind. "Kid, you're very sensitive." There was a piercing chill in the voice. "Ooh." Qin Feiyang quivered and shouted, "Don't be nervous. If I wanted to attack you, you would have been turned into a stone statue." The voice said. "Stone statue?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. The next moment, he couldn't help but feel his scalp tingle. He glanced around the void, his eyes full of vigilance, and said, "Are you?" "That's right. I am the source of the mysterious power in the soul-sealing valley." The voice said proudly. "Who are you? How can you have such a heaven-defying ability? What's your relationship with the Vanga League?" Qin Feiyang thought. "You're asking too many questions." The voice sounded in Qin Feiyang's mind again, full of impatience. "Then tell me, who are you?" Qin Feiyang said. "I am an existence that you will never be able to imagine. It's not convenient to reveal it now. When you break through to the false god realm, come here and find me. I will give you a great opportunity." The mysterious voice said. "Great opportunity?" Qin Feiyang was stunned and sneered. "I don't believe there is a free lunch in this world. Indeed, if you want to gain something, you have to pay first." The mysterious voice laughed. Qin Feiyang said, "Then what do you want me to do now?" Whoosh! A black light suddenly swept out from a small valley and floated at the entrance of the soul-sealing valley. Qin Feiyang's pupils contracted, because this black light actually gave him an extremely strong sense of danger. "Don't be afraid. This is a wisp of my divine sense. It won't hurt you." The mysterious voice sounded again. Divine sense? Qin Feiyang was shocked. According to the willow tree, only a true war god's divine sense can leave the sea of consciousness. In other words, this mysterious person is a war god. Facing a war god's divine sense, how could he dare to be careless? The most important thing was that with Lu Xingchen as an example, he was worried that this divine sense would take over his body, so he didn't dare to be careless at all. What a cautious young man. The mysterious person smiled helplessly and said, "I swear in the name of the war god that this wisp of divine sense will never hurt you. Come down, let's talk." "I don't even know who you are. Do you think I will believe your oath?" Qin Feiyang sneered. The mysterious person said, "Then what do you want to believe?" "I won't believe you no matter what." Qin Feiyang shook his head. What a joke. Keeping a war god's divine sense by his side was tantamount to a ticking time bomb. Not to mention this mysterious person also had the ability to petrify. If he wasn't careful, he might be smashed to pieces. The mysterious person was silent for a while and said, "Come, I really won't hurt you. And my divine sense can't leave the soul-sealing valley. Come quickly." This voice seemed ordinary, but it seemed to carry a magical power. Qin Feiyang's expression immediately became dull, and his eyes became unfocused. At this moment, Chapter 1603. Hee hee. The mysterious man's hideous laughter echoed in the void. But Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear to it. Finally, he stepped into the soul-sealing valley and stopped in front of that wisp of divine consciousness. However, unexpectedly his body was not petrified, but he still did not wake up. However, suddenly, that divine consciousness went into Qin Feiyang's forehead, and it went straight to Qin Feiyang's sea of consciousness. A tearing pain immediately engulfed him. Qin Feiyang screamed miserably and woke up immediately. When he found that he had entered the soul-sealing valley at this moment, his expression changed. Without thinking, he endured the pain in his sea of consciousness and immediately retreated. But he was shocked to find that his body seemed to be frozen and could not move. How could this be? Qin Feiyang was surprised. The pain in his sea of consciousness was getting more and more intense. He quickly sensed the situation in his sea of consciousness and his face instantly turned pale. The sea of consciousness could only be opened when one broke through to the false god realm. In other words, before reaching the false god realm, the sea of consciousness was closed. But at this moment, he felt that the wisp of divine consciousness tore his sea of consciousness apart. And that divine consciousness, after entering the sea of consciousness, went straight to his soul. What do you want to do? Qin Feiyang's whole body was cold and he roared. What do I want to do? Of course, I want to take over your body. It's not easy to wait for such a talented young man like you, who also contains the power of the purple gold dragon blood. Of course, I won't let you go. But your vigilance makes me a little annoyed. But no matter how vigilant you are, I have a way to deal with you. The mysterious man laughed again and again. Damn it. Qin Feiyang was shocked and angry. He said, there are so many false gods in the Vanga League. Why don't you look for them but me? They are false gods. In my current state, it will take a lot of effort to take over their bodies and I may even be counterattacked, so I can't take the risk. The mysterious man grinned. Before his voice died away, Qin Feiyang felt a tearing pain in his soul. Obviously, his divine sense had already begun to seize the body. But suddenly, the ancient castle appeared in his sea of consciousness. Dark light surged and exuded a mighty divine might. That strand of divine sense was immediately confined. Following closely, the ancient castle left Qin Feiyang's sea of consciousness with that strand of divine sense, and floated in front of Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang also immediately took out an essence soul pill, and put it into his mouth. How is this possible? This castle? Meanwhile, his divine sense struggled madly, and his words were filled with terror that couldn't be dispersed. You want to possess me? Aren't you too naive? Qin Feiyang sneered. The mysterious man roared. What exactly is this ancient castle? How is it so terrifying that even my petrification is useless against it? The first thing it wanted to do was to petrify the castle and Qin Feiyang, but it found that it couldn't. The petrification effect was blocked by the power of the ancient castle. It's a divine object that you can't afford to provoke. Qin Feiyang said. The divine sense stopped struggling and was silent for a long time before it laughed. Actually, this lord was just joking with you before. Don't take it seriously. Joking? Qin Feiyang snorted. It was trying to seize his body, and it was still a joke? Did it think that he was a 3-year-old child that was so easy to fool? This lord knows that you definitely won't believe it, but this lord can tell you a secret. This secret may be useful to you, the mysterious man said. What secret? Qin Feiyang asked disapprovingly. The mysterious man said, this lord has a way to break the devil mark. What? Qin Feiyang's spirit was lifted. Break the devil mark? Didn't that mean that Willow Tree and the 6 great elders could also leave the Black Tortoise world with him? His heart suddenly became hot. Wait. If this person really had a way to break the devil mark, then he could just leave directly. Why did he have to seize his body? Wasn't this superfluous? The mysterious man said anxiously. I really found a way to break it, please believe me. Then why didn't you leave? Why did you want to seize my body? Qin Feiyang said. It's a long story. I was sealed in the Soul Sealing Valley. As long as the seal is not broken, I can't leave the Soul Sealing Valley, let alone leave the Black Tortoise world. The mysterious man sighed. Qin Feiyang said, "So you want to seize my body and use it to escape the Black Tortoise world?" "Yes. After seizing the body, I can cut off the connection with the main body, and then I can break free from the shackles of the seal." "This is the only way," the mysterious man said. "So you're serious about seizing my body, and you said that it was just a joke?" Qin Feiyang said angrily. The mysterious man smiled awkwardly. Qin Feiyang asked, "Who sealed you here?" "An extremely terrifying existence. Even the god of battle is like an ant in front of him." The mysterious man said, "Even war gods are ants?" Qin Feiyang was shocked. "Then how strong is this person? Above war gods? Please help me. I promise I won't seize your body again." The mysterious man said with a hint of pleading in his tone. "Then tell me, if you don't seize my body, how can I help you?" Qin Feiyang said. "Find someone and let me seize his body. Then I can leave the Soul Sealing Valley, or even the Black Tortoise world, and leave the divine ruins." The mysterious man said. His tone was full of yearning and desire for freedom. "Why should I help you?" Qin Feiyang sneered. The mysterious man hurriedly said, "I can tell you the way to break the devil mark." "Then you tell me first." Qin Feiyang said. If this person wasn't lying, then it was really a good thing for him. "That's impossible. If I tell you, what if you don't tell me?" "I promise, after I succeed in seizing your body, I will tell you immediately," the mysterious man said anxiously. "Promise? You think I will believe you? In my opinion, you don't have a way to break the devil mark at all. You just want to use this point to seize my body," Qin Feiyang said. The mysterious man went silent. "What? You have nothing to say? Don't think you can fool me just because I'm young. Just be honest, what do you want? You haven't given up on seizing my body, right?" Qin Feiyang sneered. "Sigh. Why are you so suspicious? I really do have a way to break it. And I promise it will be effective." The mysterious man sighed. "I'm wondering, why are you looking for me? Although you don't dare to seize the body of a false god from the Vanga League, there are still many disciples in the Vanga League. Although they can't enter the Soul Sealing Valley, you can confuse them like you did to me and make them enter the valley. In this way you can seize their bodies, right?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "My ability to confuse is limited. It will only be effective when I'm close to the Soul Sealing Valley. And the Vanga League, because they know of my existence, has long set a rule that no disciples are allowed to go near the Soul Sealing Valley. As for looking for you, it's because I eavesdropped on the Vanga League people talking about you. They said that you are a very scary young man." The mysterious man said. "Eavesdropping? What do you mean? You have nothing to do with the Vanga League?" Qin Feiyang was stunned and asked. "No. When I was sealed here, there were no humans in the Black Tortoise realm." The mysterious man said. "No humans? Could it be that you were sealed by the creator of the miracle?" Qin Feiyang was surprised. "Yes and no. It was a ferocious beast that sealed me. It was the creator's spiritual pet. Its strength is very scary," the mysterious man said, and his tone carried a strand of anger that couldn't be dispelled, as well as fear. The creator's spiritual pet. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. If what the mysterious man said was true, then this creator was too scary. Even his spiritual pet could seal a god of war. How terrifying was his strength? "How did the Vanga League people find you?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. "It's a long story. The first leader of the Vanga League was only at the peak of the 9-star combat Emperor realm when he first entered the Soul Sealing Valley. At that time, I bewitched him and seized his body. But the result was the same as you. A divine artifact appeared and saved him. But that divine artifact was still a little inferior to your ancient castle. It could only block the petrification effect, but it couldn't imprison me. When I saw that the situation was not good, I immediately ran away. This person has been looking for me. Later, he also found my original body, but my original body was sealed, and he could do nothing. So he established the Vanga League here. The mysterious man sighed. I see. Qin Feiyang nodded and asked, where are the first leader and the divine artifact now? The first leader has already passed away, but that divine artifact has been passed down for generations, and now it is in the hands of the current leader. Little brother, it's fate that we met. Please can you help me? After the mysterious man finished speaking, he begged. Tell me the way to break the devil mark first. I'll give it a try. If it really works, I'll believe you. At that time, I can find you a physical body for you to seize. Qin Feiyang said. Really? The mysterious man was surprised. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Then can you help me find a young man as outstanding as you? It would be best if there is also purple gold dragon blood. The mysterious man said. Your requirements are quite high. It's impossible to find someone with purple gold dragon blood. However, I know 2 outstanding people, and they are now in the Black Tortoise world. One of them has even awakened a rare battle soul, the all-seeing eye. Qin Feiyang smiled. These 2 people were naturally Mu Qing and Zhuge Mingyang. All-seeing eye. The mysterious man was shocked and said excitedly, I want the person who awakened the all-seeing eye. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, I'll think of a way, but the prerequisite is that your method really works. It will definitely work. Because I heard this from the guardian himself. In fact, breaking the devil mark is not difficult, but it is not easy either. The mysterious man said. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. The mysterious man said, you should know that there are many demigod-level beasts in the Black Tortoise world, right? Qin Feiyang nodded. Then you should also know that the guardian has ordered that no one is allowed to kill those demigod-level beasts, right? The mysterious man said again. I heard this from the people of the Fengtian Palace. It seems that this is indeed the rule set by the guardian. Qin Feiyang said. The mysterious man asked. Then do you know why it set this rule? Why? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Chapter 1604. But suddenly, Qin Feiyang was stunned. Could it be that the way to remove the devil's mark lies in those pseudo-god beasts? You're really smart. I'm getting more and more eager to have your body. That's right. The way to remove the devil's mark is to eat their hearts. As long as you eat one of their hearts, the devil's mark will naturally be removed, the mysterious man said. It's that simple? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. However, although it's simple, who dares to kill a pseudo-god beast? I'm afraid that before you can kill it, the guardian will have already arrived, the mysterious man said. Then why didn't you tell the Vanga League? I believe that if they knew about this, even if the guardian ordered them to, they would definitely take the risk to hunt the pseudo-god beasts. Qin Feiyang said suspiciously. You think I haven't tried? I once told a pseudo-god in the Vanga League in private. He also wanted to test me and give it a try. But in the end, before he could succeed, the guardian arrived and killed him. Fortunately, he was killed instantly and didn't say anything. Otherwise, when he revealed his intention to hunt the pseudo-god beasts, the guardian would definitely use rule force to kill me. Since then, I didn't dare to tell anyone else, the mysterious man said. Qin Feiyang frowned. After pondering for a moment, he nodded. All right, I will find a chance to try. If it works, I will come to you again. Then you have to be careful. The guardian can use rule force. Even if it's a pseudo-god beast, it can be killed instantly. In addition, if you fall into the hands of the guardian, don't betray me, the mysterious man said. Don't worry. Even if I die, you will live well. By the way, where are you sealed in Soul Sealing Valley? Qin Feiyang asked curiously. The deepest part, the mysterious man said. Fengtian Palace's palace master went in. Will he find you? Qin Feiyang asked. The mysterious man said. Even if he finds me, he can't do anything because no one can break the seal. Last question. Do you have a demon imprint on your body? Qin Feiyang asked. No. The mysterious man said. How is this possible? Qin Feiyang was stunned. I really didn't. You'll understand when you see me in the future, the mysterious man said. Qin Feiyang nodded. stepping out of the soul-sealing valley and putting away the ancient castle. The mysterious man's divine sense immediately regained its freedom and said, "I'll wait for you here." After saying that, he turned around and left. Wait. Qin Feiyang looked at the rapidly disappearing divine sense. Suddenly he thought of something and said loudly, "I thought of another problem." "What is it?" The mysterious man said. "I'm here to destroy the Vanga League, but all the members of the Vanga League have moved." "Do you know when they moved?" Qin Feiyang said. "Yesterday morning." The mysterious man said. "Yesterday morning." Qin Feiyang frowned and said again, "Since you can eavesdrop on their conversation, do you know who tipped them off?" The mysterious man thought for a while and said, "I heard from the leader and deputy leader of the Vanga League that someone did tip them off. It was someone from the Fengtian Palace, but they didn't mention who it was." "Just as I expected," Qin Feiyang murmured. A cold light flashed in his eyes. He looked at the divine sense and said, "Thank you." Although he didn't know who it was, at least he was sure that the spy was in the Fengtian Palace. "I suddenly thought of something that you might be interested in," the mysterious man said. "What is it?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. "There's a place of inheritance hidden in the soul-sealing valley. There's a kind of control-type divine skill called the puppet technique. I remember that the deputy leader of the Vanga League once brought a woman there. She seemed to be the leader of the main tower. In the end they succeeded in getting the inheritance," the mysterious man said. "The place of inheritance? The puppet technique?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. He was wondering why the leader of the main tower and the deputy leader of the main tower had the puppet technique at the same time. It turned out that it was a kind of inherited divine skill. After coming back to his senses, Qin Feiyang said, "I'm interested, but can I get the inheritance?" "That depends on your luck. The next time you come, I'll take you to the place of inheritance." After the mysterious man finished speaking, his divine sense disappeared into the depths of the soul-sealing valley. The puppet technique. Qin Feiyang's eyes lit up. It would be good if he could get this divine skill, because the puppet technique could directly read the other party's memory and control the other party's mind to make them lose consciousness. This was a trump card. Whoosh. After a while, a stream of light flew out of the soul-sealing valley and landed next to Qin Feiyang. It was the leader of the Fengtian Palace. "How is it?" Qin Feiyang asked. "Not a single person. Even the medicine field has been moved away. But in the deepest part of the soul-sealing valley, I found a stone tower. It seems to be sealing something inside," the leader of the Fengtian Palace said. "What's sealed?" Qin Feiyang pretended to be surprised. "I don't know. I've tried, but I can't break the seal." The leader of the Fengtian Palace shook his head. Qin Feiyang was curious and said, "I really want to go in and take a look." "I'm afraid you won't have the chance because you can't go in." The leader of the Fengtian Palace smiled. "Yeah." Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled. He didn't mention the appearance of the mysterious man and said, "Besides the stone tower, what else did you find?" "Nothing." The leader of the Fengtian Palace shook his head. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. He didn't find the place of inheritance. It seemed that this place of inheritance was hidden very well. Whoosh. At this moment, there was a sound of breaking air behind them. The two turned their heads and saw the willow tree flying toward them like lightning. "Young master." The willow tree landed in front of Qin Feiyang and bowed. "How is it?" Qin Feiyang asked. The willow tree glanced at the leader of the Fengtian Palace. "There's no harm in saying it," Qin Feiyang said. The willow tree said in a deep voice, "Tianyang City has also become an empty city. I've searched the entire city and didn't find a single child." "Damn it." The leader of the Fengtian Palace was furious. Qin Feiyang looked at the leader of the Fengtian Palace and said, "Two major forces moved at the same time. Now you should believe that there's a spy in your Fengtian Palace. Go and investigate immediately. We must find this bastard," the leader of the Fengtian Palace said. "Do you have a way?" Qin Feiyang asked. The leader of the Fengtian Palace frowned and shook his head with a bitter smile. "To be honest, I really don't know how to investigate." Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said, Let's go and meet up with everyone first. So, the three of them rose into the air and quickly flew to the sky above the city. Palace Master, what's the situation? Is there anyone in the Soul Ceiling Valley? Li Yuan and the others immediately surrounded him. No. The leader of the Fengtian Palace shook his head. Yu Huang and the 6 elders also walked to Qin Feiyang's side. Did anyone leave? Qin Feiyang secretly asked. Yu Huang said. No one left even half a step, and no one sent a message. You can keep your composure? It seems that this person isn't easy to find. Qin Feiyang muttered. Yu Huang transmitted his voice. Do you think it's possible that the spy isn't among these people? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Didn't the willow tree say so? There are still some false gods guarding the Fengtian Palace. Could this spy be one of them? Yu Huang said. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. He turned to the palace master of the Fengtian Palace and asked, how many false gods are guarding the Fengtian Palace now? 3. The palace master of the Fengtian Palace said and transmitted his voice. Wait, are you suspecting them? I can't rule out that possibility, Qin Feiyang secretly said. No, I won't. They are all my relatives. One is my wife, and the other 2 are my eldest son and second son. The palace master of the Fengtian Palace transmitted his voice. You have 2 sons? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Yes. They are much older than Chang, and they both broke through to the false god realm a few decades ago. The palace master of the Fengtian Palace said. If that's the case, then the spy is among the group in front of us. Qin Feiyang thought for a while and transmitted his voice. Let's go back first and cooperate with me later. We should be able to find this person. How? The palace master of the Fengtian Palace asked. Qin Feiyang said. No matter what I say, you agree. Okay. The palace master of the Fengtian Palace nodded and shouted, let's go back. Buzz. Immediately, everyone opened the portal and walked in one after another. But Qin Feiyang didn't move. He had been observing everyone. When the last person entered the portal, he opened it and walked in with the willow tree, Yu Huang, and the 6 elders. He was worried that the spy might hide behind them and take the opportunity to sneak away when everyone returned to the Fengtian Palace. So he left last. Who did it? Bastard, come out. But when Qin Feiyang arrived in the sky above the Fengtian Palace, angry roars suddenly sounded. The palace master of the Fengtian Palace roared. What's going on? Qin Feiyang was surprised. When he lowered his head and looked at the sacred mountain below, his face suddenly froze. The sacred mountain below had been turned into ruins. There was also a tragic aura in the air. What's going on? Wasn't this place still fine when we left? What happened? Willow Tree was surprised. The palace master of the Fengtian Palace shouted. Li Yuan, go to the Fengtian city and take a look. Li Yuan suddenly said, Palace master, look at the Fengtian city, it's also destroyed. Hearing this, everyone immediately turned to look at the Fengtian city. As expected, the originally bustling Fengtian city was now nothing. The palace master of the Fengtian Palace looked at Li Yuan and shouted, Go and take a look. Li Yuan turned into a stream of light and flew towards the Fengtian city like lightning. The palace master of the Fengtian Palace also released his divine sense and spread it in all directions. Instantly, it covered the entire sacred ground. Why is it like this? Soon, the palace master of the Fengtian Palace's face turned pale as he roared, Madam, where are you? What? Madam is gone. What about the 3 young masters? The group of fake gods looked at the palace master of the Fengtian Palace in shock. I can't find them either. The palace master of the Fengtian Palace shook his head. Damn it. Which bastard is it? Come out and die. The group of fake gods roared, killing intent soaring into the sky. Willow Tree looked at everyone and turned to Qin Feiyang, asking, Young master, do you know what's going on? I don't know. Qin Feiyang shook his head. His eyes were extremely sinister as he said, However, I have a bold guess. What guess? Willow Tree asked. The palace master of the Fengtian Palace and the others also heard Qin Feiyang's words and turned to look at him. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, I think it should be the Vanga League and the Tianyang Empire. What do you mean? Yu Huang said. After the Vanga League and the Tianyang Empire found out about our plan, they beat us at our own game. When we went to the Soul Sealing Valley, they came to the Fengtian Palace to eliminate everything here. Qin Feiyang said. Everyone was stunned. Palace Master, you must find the spy and avenge Madam, the three young masters and everyone. A black-clothed elder roared. Qin Feiyang knew this person. He was the second elder of the Fengtian Palace. A few days ago in the Qingyang Mountains, Qin Feiyang destroyed his cultivation. The palace master of the Fengtian Palace said coldly, Second elder, don't worry, I will definitely find this person and cut him into pieces. Whoosh. At this moment. Chapter 1605. The continuous bad news almost made the palace master of Fengtian Palace collapse. Suddenly, an old woman walked to the side of the palace master of Fengtian Palace, glanced at Qin Feiyang, and whispered a few words in the palace master's ear. What's that look? Why does it look a little unfriendly? Willow Tree muttered. The old woman's eyes made him feel uneasy. After the palace master of Fengtian Palace heard this, he suddenly raised his head and stared at Qin Feiyang and his group. Qin Feiyang frowned and looked at the palace master of Fengtian Palace. If you have something to say, say it. Don't hide it in your heart. The palace master of Fengtian Palace said. This matter is too strange. I can't help but suspect that it might be your scheme. Me? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said. You suspect that I colluded with the Tianyang Empire and the Vanga League. That's right. The palace master of Fengtian Palace nodded and said. Otherwise, how could there be such a coincidence? Qin Feiyang looked at the old woman and asked. This is what you secretly told the palace master just now? Yes. The old woman nodded. Qin Feiyang looked at the old woman, his eyes flickering. Why are you looking at me? Is my suspicion wrong? The old woman said. Your suspicion is not wrong. But your brain can't. Qin Feiyang sneered. How dare you? The old woman was furious. Let's not talk about the Vanga League first. Who doesn't know about the grudge between Great Qin and the Tianyang Empire? How could I collude with the Tianyang Empire? Anyone with a little brain wouldn't think so. Qin Feiyang said. The old woman was speechless. The palace master of Fengtian Palace frowned and felt that it made sense. Qin Feiyang turned to look at the palace master of Fengtian Palace and said, Remember what I said to you in the Vanga League? As long as you trust me, I promise to find this spy for you. The palace master of Fengtian Palace's expression was uncertain. The spy is in your Fengtian Palace. Fengtian Palace and I are only in a cooperative relationship. So whether or not I want to find this spy doesn't have much to do with me. But, if we don't find this spy, our cooperation will be terminated immediately. If we don't get rid of this spy, the Vanga League and the Tianyang Empire will find out about our plan no matter how detailed and perfect it is. I don't want to waste time here with you, Qin Feiyang said. The palace master of Fengtian Palace was silent for a long time before he said, Are you sure you can find this spy? 100%. Qin Feiyang nodded and said with certainty. All right. I'll believe you for now. What do you want to do? The palace master of the Celestial Submission Palace gritted his teeth and asked with a nod. The old woman hurriedly said, Palace Lord, you have to think twice. Don't fall into his trap. The Palace Lord has already agreed, yet you're still trying to stop him. Could it be that you're feeling guilty? Qin Feiyang said. I'm not the spy. Why would I feel guilty? I just don't want to see the Palace Lord walk into your trap step by step. After all, you're not a trustworthy person. The old woman said angrily. How am I not trustworthy? Do you know me very well? Let me tell you. You've been trying to sabotage us time and time again. I can't help but suspect that you might be the spy, Qin Feiyang said. Ridiculous. I'm the 9th elder of Fengtian Palace. How can I be a spy? The old woman said angrily. Then cut the crap. I don't have to work with Fengtian Palace. If you piss me off, I'll leave right now. Qin Feiyang said angrily. The old woman looked at him with disdain. She wanted to say something, but the palace master of Fengtian Palace suddenly shouted, "Shut up. From now on, Qin Feiyang's words are my words. Everyone has to listen to him." The old woman's pupils shrank. She stopped talking and went silent. The palace master of Fengtian Palace looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "I choose to trust you. You'd better not disappoint me. Speak." Qin Feiyang smiled and looked at the black-robed old man. "Do you remember how I controlled you in Qingyang mountain range?" The black-robed old man nodded. "What controlled you was a divine art called the enslavement seal. Whether it's a human or a beast, once controlled by the enslavement seal, their soul will be bound. With the enslavement seal, not only can I control a person's life and death, I can also peek into their inner thoughts." Qin Feiyang said. "What?" The black-robed old man's face changed. The third elder, fourth elder, and fifth elder were also controlled by the enslavement seal. When they heard Qin Feiyang's words, their faces turned pale. They didn't expect such a terrifying divine art to control them. The palace master of Fengtian Palace looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "You mean to let them be controlled by the enslavement seal?" "No. I won't use the enslavement seal this time. Because the enslavement seal still has its shortcomings. If the spy is prepared or has a strong will, he might not be able to find out." Qin Feiyang said. "Then if you don't use the enslavement seal, what are you going to use?" The palace master of Fengtian Palace was suspicious. Qin Feiyang said, "What I'm going to use is a secret technique that is more vicious than the enslavement seal. I believe you should know about the puppet technique." "Puppet technique? Are you talking about the puppet technique that the vice leader of the Vanga League mastered?" The palace master of Fengtian Palace asked. Qin Feiyang nodded. "You also know the puppet technique?" The palace master of Fengtian Palace was surprised. "Yes. When I killed the master of the pagoda, I learned the puppet technique from her. As long as the people here are all under my control, and I can read their memories, we will be able to see who the spy is immediately," Qin Feiyang said. Puppet technique? Willow Tree was stunned and said, "Young master, why didn't I know that you learned the puppet technique?" The 6 elders also looked at him suspiciously. "You really believe it?" "I'm just bluffing them. The purpose is to make the spy panic." Qin Feiyang snickered inwardly. Then he carefully observed everyone's expression. Suddenly, he keenly noticed that the old woman who claimed to be the 9th elder had a trace of panic in her eyes. Could she be the spy? So that's how it is. Willow Tree and the others heard Qin Feiyang's words and suddenly understood. The master of the pagoda also knows the puppet technique? Why didn't I know about this? At the same time, the palace master of Fengtian Palace looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. "This matter is absolutely true. The 6 great elders can all testify," Qin Feiyang said. "The master of the pagoda does know the puppet technique. And this puppet technique was given to her by the vice leader of the Vanga League. It's just that only a few people know about this. As the former elders of the pagoda, the words of the 6 elders were naturally persuasive. Qin Feiyang must have secretly kept the Yiglea woman." He found that after hearing the words of the 6 elders, the old woman looked even more panicked. "Palace master, this must be a trap. You see, if you agree, we will all be controlled by him. At that time, we will have to listen to his orders. If he goes back on his word, we can only watch helplessly," the old woman said anxiously. The palace master of Fengtian Palace looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "This is indeed too risky. Is there no other way?" "No." Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, "I'll say it again. If you trust me, you will agree." "I can't agree. Palace master, this is not child's play. You must be careful." This time, not only the old woman, but the others also objected, because they were indeed worried that this might be a trap set by Qin Feiyang. Willow Tree raised his eyebrows and snorted. "Not only did we fail to be a good person, but we also ended up with a bad reputation. Young master, let's go." "Yes, let's go. Anyway, this spy is a scourge of Fengtian Palace. It has nothing to do with us. Moreover, we have Chang Shui. Even without Fengtian Palace, we can still destroy the Vanga League and the Tianyang Empire. It's just a little tiring. Yu Huang nodded in agreement. Qin Feiyang looked at the palace master of Fengtian Palace. The palace master of Fengtian Palace also lowered his head, struggling with his thoughts. It seems that you still don't dare to trust me. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. He cupped his hands and said, if that's the case, then I won't ask for a rebuff. Goodbye. After saying that, he turned around and took out a portal. Wait. The palace master of Fengtian Palace's eyes trembled as he hurriedly looked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang turned to look at him. The palace master of Fengtian Palace clenched his hands and said, I believe you. Palace master. The old woman and the others were burning with anxiety. The palace master of Fengtian Palace suddenly turned his head to look at the old woman and the others, and shouted, if anyone dares to say another word, then I have reason to suspect that he is a spy. Everyone lowered their heads, not daring to make a sound, but their faces were full of dissatisfaction. Li Yuan glanced at the crowd and said in a deep voice, even the palace master trusts Qin Feiyang. What are you afraid of? Hurry up, don't waste time. After saying that, he was the first to walk in front of Qin Feiyang. The palace master of Fengtian Palace raised his eyebrows and shouted, hurry up. Alas! The old man in black let out a long sigh and also walked in front of Qin Feiyang, standing next to Li Yuan. The others also moved in twos and threes, and walked in front of Qin Feiyang one after another. The old woman was also walking towards Qin Feiyang. At this moment, her expression was very calm. If one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't find anything unusual about her. However, just before, Qin Feiyang had already targeted the old woman. Because this person's previous series of actions were too strange. First he fanned the flames. Then he revealed a panicked look. These were all signs of a guilty conscience. Therefore, Qin Feiyang paid special attention to this person. Even though the old woman looked calm, he noticed that she was glancing around out of the corner of her eyes. It gave people the feeling that she was looking for a way out. Can you all hurry up? As long as you have a clear conscience, what are you afraid of? Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed and he shouted impatiently. The people who were still behind, hearing this, hurriedly sped up and ran towards Qin Feiyang. The old woman also sped up her pace, but there was a trace of anxiety in her eyes. Qin Feiyang secretly smiled. He could basically conclude that this person was a spy, and he transmitted his voice, Palace Master, get ready to take action. The Palace Master of Fengtian Palace was shocked and secretly said, who is it? Whoever runs away later, it's that person. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. Before his voice died away. Chapter 1606. The old woman thought that no one was paying attention to her, so she thought she could escape. However, just as she took a step forward, the palace lord of Fengtian Palace also dashed forward and stopped in front of the old woman. Where do you think you are going? What's going on? The old woman was surprised. How did he react so quickly? Surround her. Qin Feiyang shouted. Willow Tree Yu Huang and the 6 elders dashed out and surrounded the old woman. What's going on? Li Yuan and the others were still in shock. They couldn't accept it. The 9th elder was a spy? Qin Feiyang swept his gaze over the group of people and shouted. What are you all standing there for? Hurry up and go. The group of people quivered and immediately ran over, surrounding the old woman so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. 9th elder, why are you here? What did the Vanguard League give you to betray us? We are a family. Li Yuan and the other 8 grand elders looked at the old woman with pained expressions as they cried out. What are you talking about? I just thought of something and need to take care of it. What? Are you suspecting that I am a spy? The old woman said with a dumbfounded expression. Pretend. Keep pretending. Qin Feiyang walked step by step to Lu Mu's side, his face filled with a cold smile. Qin Feiyang, don't talk nonsense. Isn't it just the art of puppetry? What am I afraid of? Come, I will let you control me and read my memories. The old woman had a very angry look on her face as she aggressively walked towards Qin Feiyang to prove her innocence. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. He secretly sent a message to Willow Tree, Yu Huang, and the 6 elders. Be careful. She is desperate. Lu Mu was shocked. He transmitted his voice. You mean, she's just putting on an act to trick us so that she can make a move on you? Yes. Be careful, she will self-destruct. Qin Feiyang thought. Upon hearing the word self-destruct, Willow Tree and the others immediately became vigilant. The self-destruction of a quasi-divinity was no joke. The scene of Gao Yuan blowing himself up in the Qingyang Mountains 2 days ago was still vivid in his mind. During the conversation, the old woman had already arrived in front of Qin Feiyang. The distance between the two of them was only 2 to 3 meters. For a quasi-divinity, this distance was nothing more than a walk in the park. Suddenly, her eyes flashed with murderous intent. She stretched out her arm to grab Qin Feiyang. The palace master of Feng Tian Palace was taken aback. His expression changed abruptly as he hurriedly shouted, "Stop!" However, the old woman turned a deaf ear to him, and her old face was full of ridicule. However, in the depths of Qin Feiyang's eyes, there was also a hint of mockery. Whoosh! Almost at the same time, Willow Tree took a step forward and stood in front of Qin Feiyang, sending a palm strike towards the old woman. Yu Huang and the 6 elders also made a move together. The old woman was stunned. How could she react to this? Seeing this, Qin Feiyang said in his heart, "This is a good opportunity. Don't give her a chance to self-destruct." "Then let's kill her directly," Yu Huang said ferociously. Taking advantage of the old woman's distraction, Willow Tree took the lead and sent a palm strike towards the old woman's chest. Puff! The old woman immediately spat out a mouthful of blood and her face turned pale. At the same time, Yu Huang also took out the snake scale, and the 6 elders also took out their battle swords. The sharp edge tore through the sky and madly slashed towards the old woman. "Want to kill me?" However, although Willow Tree's palm strike severely injured the old woman, it also brought her back to reality. He go to hell with me." She laughed sinisterly, and a destructive aura immediately rushed out of her body. Self-destruct. The palace master of Feng Tian Palace, Li Yuan, and the others immediately changed their expressions. Yu Huang, Willow Tree, and the 6 elders were also terrified. They immediately stopped and retreated to Qin Feiyang's side. Looking at everyone who was like a frightened bird, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Then he looked at the palace master of Feng Tian Palace. At this moment, he had already taken Li Yuan and the others to hide in the space divine item. Qin Feiyang was a little annoyed. Why were a group of fake gods so timid? Willow Tree urged. "Young master, let's go to the castle quickly." Yu Huang and the 6 elders also had anxious looks on their faces. But Qin Feiyang was indifferent and stared at the old woman without blinking. "Palace master and the others have already escaped. Why are you still not running? Aren't you afraid of death?" The old woman laughed. Qin Feiyang said lightly, "If you want to self-destruct, hurry up. Don't dawdle." The old woman's face darkened. "What? You don't dare? Do you think I'm them? Do you think you can scare me just by pretending?" Qin Feiyang sneered. Pretending? Willow Tree and the others were stunned. The palace master of the heavenly palace, and the others who were hiding in the space divine item were also stunned. Then, a trace of shame couldn't help but crawl up the faces of the group of people. They weren't even afraid of a war king, but they were like birds that were startled by the twang of a bow. But now, they didn't dare to go out, because if the old woman really self-destructed, then they would all be annihilated. "Hurry up, self-destruct. Let me tell you, you have to self-destruct today." Qin Feiyang shouted. "Don't force me." The old woman roared, her face full of anxiety. That's right. Her self-detonation was indeed just to scare everyone. She had already planned her escape route. But what she never thought was that Qin Feiyang would actually see through her plan. "So what if I force you? Today, you can either self-destruct here or die in our hands. Choose for yourself," Qin Feiyang said. The old woman was furious to the extreme, and the destructive aura that rushed out from her body became more and more terrifying. "If you don't dare to self-destruct, then why are you still pretending?" Qin Feiyang's face was full of disdain, and he actually took the initiative to walk towards the old woman, his aura aggressive. The old woman looked flustered and kept retreating. Willow Tree Yu Huang and the 6 elders saw this and hurriedly followed behind Qin Feiyang. His body was dripping with cold sweat. The courage of this young master was beyond imagination. Facing the self-destruction of a false god, he could still be so calm. Seeing Qin Feiyang approaching, the old woman became more and more flustered and shouted, "Don't come any closer, or I will really self-destruct." "Then hurry up. No one is stopping you." "What's wrong?" "No temper." Qin Feiyang's eyes became more and more aggressive. The old woman collapsed. How could she meet such a difficult kid? He was not even afraid of death. What should she do now? "Since you don't dare to self-destruct, then stop for me." Qin Feiyang shouted angrily. The old woman's body trembled, looking at Qin Feiyang. Her eyes were full of struggle. Finally, she squatted in the void in despair, holding her head and crying bitterly. The destructive aura also gradually dissipated. Obviously, the line of defense in her heart had completely collapsed. Willow Tree Yu Huang and the 6 elders looked at each other and immediately rushed up, ready to attack the old woman. "Stop!" But Qin Feiyang suddenly shouted. "What?" Several people were stunned and turned to look at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. They were a little puzzled. Such a good opportunity, why stop them? The palace master of Fengtian Palace also appeared at this time. However, only he came out alone. The others were still in the space divine object. "Why don't you destroy her first?" The palace master of Fengtian Palace also looked at Qin Feiyang in confusion. "Now you know how to destroy her? What were you doing just now?" "I really didn't expect that a group of fake gods would be cowards. Especially you." Qin Feiyang turned to look at Willow Tree, Yu Huang, and the 6 elders and said, "Didn't I warn you in advance to prevent her from self-destructing?" Willow Tree and the others nodded. "Then what did you do?" "Seeing her self-destruct. Even your souls were scared away. Is that all you have? In the situation just now, with your strength, knowing the situation, you could destroy her sea of qi when she self-destructed. But you chose to retreat and missed an opportunity. I also know that Gao Yuan's self-destruction has traumatized you. But sometimes, there is only one opportunity. Once missed, there will never be another. I hope you can remember." Qin Feiyang said. "Of course." Willow Tree and the others lowered their heads in shame. Even the palace master of Fengtian Palace was blushing, too ashamed to show his face. Qin Feiyang shook his head, walked to the old woman and said, "You must have your difficulties." The old woman didn't answer, but just cried bitterly. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and asked, "Is it because of the puppet technique?" "How do you know?" The old woman suddenly looked up and stared at Qin Feiyang, her eyes full of surprise. "It's easy to tell. If you were really a member of the Vanga League, you would have self-destructed without hesitation. But you didn't. And a fake god is squatting here and crying, which means you have a lot of grievances. Combined with your previous behavior, I've come to the conclusion that you're under the control of the Everlasting Alliance, and have no control over yourself," Qin Feiyang said. The old woman stared blankly at Qin Feiyang, nodded after a long time, and said, "Back then, before I stepped into the fake god realm and became an elder, I was already controlled by the Vanga League. I didn't want to work for them, but I had no choice. I didn't want to die." Qin Feiyang asked, "If you were given a chance, would you turn over a new leaf?" "Of course." The old woman nodded without hesitation. "Who is the person controlling you?" Qin Feiyang asked. "The deputy chief of the Vanga League," the old woman said. "Is he nearby right now?" Qin Feiyang asked. "No." The old woman shook her head. "That's good." Qin Feiyang nodded. He formed a seal with both hands, and the seal of slavery quickly appeared. If the deputy chief of the Vanga League was not nearby, he could help the old woman break the puppet technique without worry. On the contrary, if the deputy chief was nearby, he would have to enter the castle immediately. This was because the puppet technique could make people lose their consciousness. If the deputy chief saw that he could break the puppet technique, he would definitely control the old woman and make her body explode. "This is?" The old woman looked at the seal of slavery suspiciously. This is the seal of slavery. The seal of slavery can break the puppet technique. Qin Feiyang said. Really? The old woman was stunned and asked hurriedly. It's true. We were controlled by the puppet technique in the past. Young master used the seal of slavery to break it for me. The 6 elders said. I beg you, please help me. I really don't want to do anything that will hurt everyone. All these years, whenever I think of what I did for the Vanga League, I want to commit suicide to atone for my sins. The old woman exclaimed. Qin Feiyang said. Destroy your cultivation first. The old woman did not hesitate. She slapped her lower abdomen, and her sea of energy shattered on the spot. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.